Marilyn, any updates on Supervisor Gastina?
He is trying to get in via his phone. His Zoom is not working. It wants him to sign everything in all over again. So he's just going to come in via phone.
Okay, all right. I think we'll just go ahead and get started, knowing that maybe some will be joining us here a little bit scattered as they come in. So, but I will go ahead and call the meeting to order of the Rock County Board of Supervisors. It is 6:04, Thursday, August 13th. So we'll have and call this to order. Tonight we will have Supervisor Schultz lead us in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Will everyone please rise?
And here. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Okay, I can't do that.
Okay, Kathy, you are still muted. Supervisor Schultz, can you unmute yourself? Okay, Supervisor Bostwick, will go over to you then. So Supervisor Bostwick will lead us in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance then.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we remain in the grip of COVID-19, most of us are yearning for things to improve, for things to get back to normal. But what is normal? I would suggest that there is no normal.
There
The only thing constant or normal in this world is change.
do it.
That will be the case moving forward. Whatever happens, we must be ready for whatever is put in our way and accept it. As it is said, everything visible is temporary. Everything invisible is eternal. Please follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
To the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bostwick. All right, next item, please.
Next item is roll call. Agutter?
Here.
Beaver?
Present.
Baumkamp?
here,
Pam Bostwick? I can see you, Pam. Rich Bostwick?
Here.
Brian?
here,
Davis?
here,
Fox?
here,
Gastina? Holman?
here,
Knutson?
here,
I see Gastina's here now. Levy?
here,
Lokrantz?
here,
Mawhinney?
Here.
Mulligan?
here,
Pierre?
present,
Podzolny?
here,
Potter? Ratchkin?
here,
Richard?
here,
Reinish?
Here.
Scholl?
Hey, this is Pam again. What number do I call in?
Schultz? I see you, Kathy. Sweeney?
here,
Taylor?
here,
Wildy,
Here.
Williams,
Present?
Yeomans,
Here.
Zajac,
Here.
Purviance.
Here.
The only one I didn't hear from was Potter, just verifying that he's not come into the meeting. 28 present, 1 absent.
All right, we do have a quorum. Next item, please.
Next item is adoption of agenda.
Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So
Davis
moved.
moved.
Okay, I have a motion by Pierre and a second by Davis. Any changes to the agenda at all?
No changes.
All right. All those in favor of the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed with no? All right. Agenda adopted. Next item, please.
Item 5, approval of minutes from July 9th, 2020.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move them.
Okay,
20
moved by-
seconds.
Moved by Supervisor Bryan, seconded by Supervisor Moini. Any questions or changes on the minutes at all? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed with no? Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Next item, please.
Next item is item 6, public hearing. We do not have a public hearing this evening. Item 7 is citizen participation, communications, and announcements. And we do have several announcements this evening. We do have one person signed up to speak. And I am looking to see if he has called in. I am not seeing, but I'm going to unmute. John Peterson had said that he was going to Zoom in. Is this John that I just unmuted?
No, I think you unmuted me.
Oh, I unmuted you. I don't see him in the meeting. Marilyn, did he come in? I know you're watching for his number.
No, I have not seen his number yet.
Okay. So he did also send this in a paper form. So I'll read what he wrote. So John Peterson, subject, First Amendment of the Constitution and your duty to uphold your oath of office. All of you on the Rock County Board of Supervisors are now sworn to uphold the above-mentioned rights. It is your duty. Above that is a quote from your oath of office. All speech and expression are key to our diverse nation. All people hold their individual beliefs sacred. So what is the duty of government and those elected to the individual? Your duty is to allow a fool to have his belief unless it is transferred to into a call to action. Expression is not action. You are not allowed to say you know the mind of a person. The mind of a person is the individual's and the individuals alone. To do so is wrong and against the idea that every individual gets due process before every judgment can be made. To condemn expression from only one point of view is against the very fiber of the Constitution. The idea of the opposing view is paramount to our nation, and to condemn an idea or expression is against the oath of your office. Government's place is to support the freedom of speech and expression of the individual and organizations in America. Many people here in America believe in different religions, some of which call for the death of other people or religions, yet the death of another religion is preached from that religion. Why? Because it is a personal religious belief. It is only illegal or against the Constitution when it intrudes on the life of another person in America, when it becomes an action. In America, we do not ban books, images, art, or language. To even consider this is repulsive. Now, your oath of office. If you take an action that is against the Constitution and the law, you violate that oath, and you will be committing a civil rights violation. You, as individuals who take the action of vote in support of resolution, ordinance, or law, not the board, will be complicit in a civil crime against our nation, state, and people of Rock County. Let this letter stand in notice of possible violation of civil acts, and a ban is acted on. Thank you for your time, John Peterson. So the next item that we had just before the state mandate was put in place for masks, we had a lot of public comment that came in. Prior to that mask mandate being put in place, we received a support of the mandate from 34 different individuals, which we will put their names into the record, and we received 8 those opposed to the state mandate. We're not going to read those in since that state mandate is now in place. The next item is from Tony Farrell. Tony Farrell is Senior is the Volunteer Executive Director of Rock County Suicide Prevention Network and Safety Series. Tony writes, September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. I encourage everyone to please review the warning signs at Rock County, Wisconsin Crisis Intervention brochure. If you are thinking of harming yourself or you know of someone who is thinking of suicide, please call Rock County Crisis Intervention. They are available 24/7 at 608-757-5024 or 608-757-2244 or 911. Please reach out to someone who has lost a loved one to suicide. In order for them to move forward with their healing process, they are in need of our help and compassion. I would like to thank all of the Rock County organizations who work so hard to prevent these terrible tragedies. One tragedy is one too many. The next item is from Jeff Navarro. I live in Janesville and own a small restaurant here. The shutdown and restriction have been difficult, but I'm making it. Currently, we hear that the county is thinking about opening up even more. I hope that this is not true. A quick look around the state, region, and country will show that the rate of infection is growing quickly. While Rock County may be stable today, that is something that, and probably will, change quickly. We are not isolated from the outside world. We have many people traveling daily to other infected spots and returning. People are traveling cross-country to hotspots and returning. It won't take much to overwhelm our hospitals and healthcare systems. No move to open up should be considered without the willingness to shut back down, and shutting back down would be infinitely harder than the first time. For safety and health of the country, we must wait. We may have already gone too far. The next item is from James Foss. My message the first time must have fallen on deaf ears, so I write again to ask supervisors to speak and behave like it is I've seen at previous county board meetings. The beauty of being capable of intelligent thought is that we all are allowed to have differing opinions from subject to subject. However, it is never okay to speak disparagingly to and about others. This is especially true of those who hold elected offices, from the President of the United States to the two county supervisors. I won't get into the behavior of the President because it isn't germane here, but hearing county board supervisors speak like they have in the past meetings is deeply upsetting for the citizens who tune in on YouTube to watch the meetings. We expect you to be above that sort of behavior and language. I urge you all in future to speak with dignity and respect towards each other. No more cutting people off, no more speaking rudely toward each other, no more disparaging remarks directed towards others, individually or collectively. I applaud the chair for stopping it mid-meeting as she has, but it shouldn't get to that point because this behavior is unacceptable. We received several on the minimum wage agenda item. First one is from Amanda Hookham. I wish to speak. I want to state my opposition to more than doubling the minimum wage over the next 5 years. Minimum wage jobs are not meant to support families. They are for positions that are typically meant to be held by high school students or semi-disabled persons, small businesses that employ high school students, or people with visually handicapped school or even can-do type work to have to pay $15 will push employers to eliminate these positions or be forced to close their businesses. The track of the minimum wage should not take such a severe hike over this time. Please vote in opposition of this. Next one is from Peter Gernitsky. I am writing, voice my deep concern on the upcoming board meeting to discuss minimum wage. As an employer, this mandatory increase would only serve to raise the cost of living for the very people you seek to help. Simply put, forcing the employer to pay more money will only cause the cost of doing business to rise. This, in turn, will make the cost of the end product being sold to the customer to cost more. I highly suggest you look to Seattle, where this has been implemented and disastrous effects have happened. The ability of entry-level or undereducated skilled to get the job has been inhibited. While I do believe a small increase in minimum wage should be looked at, a more reasonable proposal will be to raise it to $8.68, which is the percent increase compared to inflation since 2008. Next one is from Dan Cunningham. My name is Dan Cunningham, and I am the Vice President of Forward Janesville, the Janesville Area Chamber of Commerce. We represent over 500 businesses across South Central Wisconsin. I'm writing in opposition to Board Resolution number 20-6B-038. This resolution calls for the support of Wisconsin Bill LRB 3342-1, a bill to raise Wisconsin's minimum wage to $15 per hour. I sent each supervisor a memo detailing our research on this issue and why we think there are better alternatives to minimum wage increase. I hope that each of you had an opportunity to read this memo. There is no question that poverty and income equality is a significant concern in our area. The coronavirus pandemic will only intensify the income challenges experienced by many area families, and we must find ways to support them. That said, now is the wrong time to be considering a minimum wage increase, however symbolic the resolution might be. The corona pandemic has set our economy into the deepest recession since the Great Depression, and many businesses in Rock County are struggling to keep their doors open. The timing of the resolution alone is enough to warrant opposition. We fear that a minimum wage increase would force businesses to eliminate jobs. A 2019 report by the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office suggests that a $15 per minute minimum wage would cause 1.3 million workers to lose their jobs. We support bipartisan initiatives to help those suffering from financial hardship, such as a boost in the earned income tax credit. The earned income tax credit increase wouldn't have the same negative employment consequences as a minimum wage increase because the earned income tax credit operates through the tax code instead of through a mandate on employers. I encourage the County Board to consider a resolution asking the state and federal governments to support low-income families through a boost in the earned tax income credit. We strongly encourage the Board to continue to support work that targets industries that will raise the area's average wages, keep good jobs in our area, and attract startups and entrepreneurs. Thank you for your time and consideration. The next item is on banning the Confederate flag. This one's somewhat long, so I may have to cut it off when we get a little bit closer. The board is considering banning the Confederate flag on county property when displayed by county staff. The resolution makes no exemptions for privately owned vehicles used by county staff while parked on county property. In all likelihood, because county property includes county roads, the board is essentially banning free speech everywhere for all county employees. If they need to use or cross a county road to go anywhere to exercise their free speech rights. I've enclosed a Confederate flag in the body of this email. Assuming you're reading this on a county-owned email account, that might also be a county-owned computer or county paper owned by the county, then you're also displaying it and in violation of the resolution you're proposing. That is absolutely insane. The resolution states that the Confederate flag is a symbol of hate. However, not everyone sees the Confederate flag as a negative symbol, but rather a positive symbol. For instance, some people view it as a positive symbol of heritage, culture, ancestry, and states' rights. Whether you agree or disagree, on what the Confederate flag symbolizes is immaterial because the U.S. Constitution includes a First Amendment right to freedom of speech and expression. Each person, including county staff members, have rights as American citizens working in the public sector, which actually exceed the rights of workers in the private sector to decide what the Confederate flag means to them. If you ban one flag but not another, you open yourself up to discrimination lawsuits. The county government is not a privately owned and operated organization like NASCAR or Walmart, and therefore county employees have much more leeway when it comes to the exercise of their constitutional rights. What kind of speech do you suppose needs First Amendment protection? Surely you don't need protection for speech that everyone agrees with. No, the First Amendment exists solely to protect controversial speech, of which I think most people would agree is applicable to the Confederate flag. The value system in this country was founded on commands that a person's rights to express themselves overrides a snowflake's right to not be offended. As elected board members, it is your constitutional duty to recognize and respect that. If you pay attention to the news, then you may be aware that Redwood City leaders last month quietly erased a Black Lives Matter street mural after a local businesswoman sought the city's permission to paint a mega 2020 mural alongside it. Mayor Diane Howard describes the situation as one of those things where your good intentions steamroll into something that's not so pretty. By voting in favor of the resolution, you show that you have a heart large enough to try and act with good intentions, but a brain too small to realize your intentions will steamroll into something that is not good at all. If the country has an extensive problem with people bringing in flags from home, then you need to ban all employee-owned flags at the workplace, not just the ones you disagree with. If the county has a problem with flying flags worn on articles of clothing, then the county needs to provide an employee uniform. I encourage you to look at other solutions that provide a neutral and welcoming environment without coercing free speech. When you stand, face the American flag and pledge allegiance to it, do you really believe in liberty and justice for all or only for some? Will you vote to protect the rights of everyone or only people you think the same way as you? Do you take your oath to uphold the Constitution seriously? Your vote against this resolution will be proof that you are a real American with American values, whereas your vote in favor of the resolution is an admission you lied when taking your oath to the Constitution that you don't believe in the First Amendment. Sincerely, Mike Zuriel. Next one is from Tom Nielsen. I was wondering why Rock County was spending time on this issue and opening up to potential lawsuits on First Amendment grounds. The last email we received for public comment, and I emailed this to the county board members earlier today. It's from Osman Construction. It says, County Board Supervisors, please see the bid protest below that was submitted to Director of Purchasing prior to the August 4th General Services meeting. The committee decided at that meeting to move forward with an award recommendation even though there was a formal protest presented. We would like the board to understand that this protest has been made, and as of this date, no contact or nor response has been made to it. Under that is the 5-letter protest that was attached, which is why I emailed it since it is so long. And we will be discussing that a little bit further when that item comes up, and Corporation Counsel and Facilities Management can discuss that then. That's the last item I have for public comment.
Thank you, Lisa. Before I open it up for supervisors and then on to staff, just wanted to make the announcement that we did have several birthdays in August already and a couple more to come. So happy belated birthday to Supervisors Peer and Levy, and happy soon to have birthday to Supervisors Sweeney and Richard. Hope you guys all are able to celebrate and enjoy some much needed quality time with family and friends and loved ones, social distance, of course. And with that being said, I'll go ahead and open it up to any supervisors with communications or announcements that they would like to share. Again, just a quick couple of things here. please make sure that if you are not speaking, that your mic is muted so that we don't have a lot of the interference coming through from background noise. That's item number 1. And then just item number 2 would be, remember that for communications and announcements, you know, we can make statements, but this isn't a time to really debate issues. So just wanted to throw that reminder out there as well. So with that being said, I see Supervisor Bostwick has his hand raised, and then I'll go to Supervisor Mawhinney when Supervisor Bostwick is finished.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to remind supervisors that our next scheduled county board meeting is Thursday, September 10th. That's also the date that we as a board decided that we would start meeting again in person. I have talked to a few supervisors over the last couple of days, and I know that there's a lot of consternation about this. Some people really aren't comfortable with that format yet. That being said, when we addressed this issue a couple of months ago, it was well intended, but I'm not quite sure how well that's turned out. People were thinking in the back of their minds, at least I was, okay, by August, things should be simmered down, or by September for sure, things should be simmered down enough where we can safely meet in person. But as I said, we're knocking on September's door here, and I think maybe we should see what supervisors think about this, revisit the issue, and make sure that everybody, staff included, is comfortable with an in-person format. So again, we're not going to debate this, but if you have some feelings or some thoughts about this, I think now might be a good time to express them. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bostwick. Supervisor Mawhinney?
Thank you. I have 2 items. One is congratulations to our constitutional officers for their basically re-election. Welcome back, Lisa. Also, I would like to request that the time of the November 2nd budget meeting be put on the September 10th agenda. My reason for this request is that not all people work during the day, and this gives them an opportunity to hear what we are doing, making us transparent and accountable. There's also a major election on November 3rd, and in fairness to the citizens that are involved with the election and our clerk's office, I am requesting a morning meeting on November 2nd. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Lockrantz has his hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to tell everyone that the Welty Environmental Center is doing the Rock River 5K, and that's going to be from August 17th to September 7th. And they're asking for you to do as much distance as you can. They usually have a nice farm-to-table dinner every year, but this year that's obviously not going to happen. So this is a way for them to try to raise some money for environmental education in the State Line area. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Lockrantz. I also see Supervisor Rashkin has his hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, there was an election a couple of days ago, and I wanted to make a short statement. Wanted to say that we ran a positive campaign, but we didn't run a winning campaign. So my congratulations to Rock County Clerk Lisa Tollefson on a clear re-election victory. I thank every single person. I think if we were in person together, I would applaud right now, but it just doesn't work. I thank every single person who voted for me and all who voted, period. Thanks to the many different people who helped and supported our campaign throughout. Thanks also to everyone who contributed to this campaign or supported it with an endorsement. I'm very grateful to you, and I hope the way we ran our campaign made you feel proud of lending your name or opening your wallet to us. I'm also very grateful to have so many good-hearted people in my life who helped with the campaign, as well as provided support over the past 3 months. We showed that in government and politics, the values of transparency, accountability, and being community-minded still matter. We didn't win, but we made people take notice. I urge everyone to vote in November election and remember that in the end, we voters are all in this together. This land is your land. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rashkin. Supervisor Wildy has his hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd just like to echo what Supervisor Bostwick had to say about the in-person meeting next month. yes, at the time the survey was sent out, and when I filled it out, I couldn't have imagined the situation as it is now. And currently, I'll make this short. I mean, I would not feel comfortable going into a gathering of 30 or more people inside whenever we meet, unless things were to get significantly better than they are right now. In fact, I'd say if community spread is still a thing, perhaps we should not do this. The CDC's recommendation to governing boards stands as to do them virtually, to do meetings virtually if at all possible. And we have been doing them, so it is possible. Also, I believe our own health department's recommendations are to not gather with, to limit gatherings under 25 people at phase 2. And we have more than 25 people. I see no reason to go back in person other than people simply like it more. That isn't a good enough reason. So if there's any way we could reconsider, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Wildy. Supervisor Bonkamp.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with that also. I think that it's too much is going on right now. I'll bring up an example. Last week, the Orfordville Fire District had a meeting. There were 6 of their officers and another person in this meeting. And during that meeting, all 6 of the officers incidentally or purposely took their mask off when they spoke. It kind of defeats the purpose of it. And they also ordered the one person to take his mask off for whatever reason during it, exposing everybody. See that we got this all set up. We have good things going. I think it'll be best for everybody. People like me that's in the profession know the dangers. We see it. And I think that moving forward, that's what we need to do is listen to those people that see what's going on and try to prevent the spread of this. I don't want to get it. I don't want to spread it to someone. I'd hate to know that I was asymptomatic and for some reason it got spread to somebody at the meeting, if we can prevent that. So, and I know in the health services, we decided to go till the first year to have our meetings virtual. So we don't have any issues. So that's my viewpoint on that.
Thank you, Supervisor Bonkamp. Supervisor Taylor has his hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just echo that as well. I didn't expect the situation to be what it is come September. I was just curious, was there any more progress on the hybrid meetings? I know there was some discussion that that was a work in progress, but they weren't really sure if that was going to be possible. I was just curious if there's an update on that.
I can maybe ask that Josh maybe speaks to that briefly in his comments. But at this time, if there are any other supervisors who have any communications or announcements, now would be the appropriate time.
Madam Chair, this is Supervisor Gustina. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mr. Gustina.
Okay, thank you. I had some trouble getting in, so just wondering. I was waiting to get in here. Thank you.
You're in now. Yep, you're welcome.
Madam Chair, I've been raising my hand.
Oh, I don't know why it's not coming in over here, Supervisor Bryan, but go ahead, sir.
I would like to echo what the other supervisors have said. I know when we got the questionnaire, it just had the 3 choices on there. And that's where I was hoping that there would have been one that said, okay, the 1st of September, let's reevaluate it and then decide what we're going to do. So I would like to extend it as far as possible.
Thank you, Supervisor Bryan. Any other supervisors who haven't had a chance yet?
Can I, Supervisor Renish, have the question?
Yes, go ahead, Supervisor Renish.
I do agree. By the way, I think we should go at least through the first of the year and then reevaluate. Just working in healthcare, we're still expecting a surge, so I don't want to see that happen and then have to go back to, I'd rather just keep it going the way it is. But then also, I wanted to maybe ask a clarifying question. I missed part of what Supervisor Mawhinney was saying about a morning meeting. What was that? that you were saying?
Supervisor Mawini was referring to the budget meeting times that was sent, the memo was sent out to supervisors
Oh.
last week.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other supervisors at this time wishing to speak? All right, hearing none and not seeing any hands here, then I will turn it over to staff. And I don't know, Josh, if you want to just briefly give us an update on sort of what the situation is currently with the meeting situation.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. The issue with meetings, certainly, you can decide as you're talking about the right time to come back. Committees also have that decision to make, as Supervisor Baumkamp indicated. There are committees now that are meeting either sort of in-person option, hybrid fashion. The ability to meet in a hybrid format in a committee is much easier than it would be for the full county board. I've had discussion recently with IT director about whether or not hybrid meetings for the county board would be possible. And at this point, we're thinking that that is just going to be too challenging to pull off and do a good job of when you think about 29 members and voting through different mechanisms potentially. And so right now we're thinking that hybrid meetings for the county board is not something that we're going to be able to pursue, but committee meetings certainly potentially. And if there are committee chairs who wish to pursue something, please let us know. We can help work that out.
Thanks, Josh. Any other staff with any communications or announcements? All right, hearing none, next item, please.
Lisa, you're on mute.
Thank you. Item 8A, appointment to the Behavioral Health Redesign Steering Committee. New appointment, Kim Lipschen.
All right, is there a motion?
Jeremy.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Zajac. Is there a second?
Wildly.
Second.
Seconded by Supervisor Bryan. Any questions or comments from supervisors? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the appointment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Any opposed with no? All right, motion passes. Next item.
Item 8B, alternate appointments to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. Chief Deputy Craig Strauss.
All right, is there a motion?
Supervisor Zajac.
Moved by Supervisor Zajac, seconded by Supervisor Wildy. Any questions or comments from supervisors? Hearing none, all those in favor of the appointment, please say aye.
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 Any opposed with no? Motion carries. Next item, please.
Next item, item 8C, appointment to Local Emergency Planning Committee. Lieutenant Jason Dascom.
All right, is there a motion?
Moved by Knutson.
Is there a second?
Second by Bostwick.
Okay, moved by Knutson, seconded by Bostwick. Any questions or comments from supervisors? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed with no? All right, motion carries. Next item, please.
Next item, item 8D, appointments to Emergency Medical Services Advisory Council. Captain Kurt Fell, Robert Belasco, Robert Lulling, Rob Lulling, Robert Sawarnski, Chief Gene Wright, Sergeant Sheena Kohler, Jody Meyer, Terry Jones, and Dr. Liz Robinson.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Supervisor Peer.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Peer. Is there a
Mawini,
second?
second.
Seconded by Mawini. Any comments or questions from supervisors? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed with no? Motion carries. Next item, please.
Item 8E, appointments to the Blue Ribbon Commission on Organizational Excellence. New appointments, Supervisors Brian Knutson, Kara Purviance, Mary Beaver, Stephanie Agutter, Lou Peer, Christine Fluhauer, and Mark Perry.
Your motion?
Winnie moves.
Seconded by Potter.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from supervisors? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed with no? All right, motion carries. Next item, please.
Item 9, recognition of county employees or others. Item 9A, to recognize August as Child Support Awareness Month.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Moved by Beaver.
All right,
Second by Brian.
thank you. And Supervisor Beaver, will you take us through an overview of this item?
Sure. Child Support Awareness Month is coming up, and they do a lot of good things with child support. It's a hard job of intervening between parents and the kids, and they do an excellent job. If you see any of them, I hope that you would tell them thank you for what they do. Short little thing is Rock County Child Support Agency collected $21 million in child support in 2019. They increased public awareness and providing children with the support they need and the services offered by Rock County Child Support Agency benefits Rock County children and families. So thank you very much for all that you do, our child support service people.
Thank you, Supervisor Beaver. And yes, thank you to all of those who work in our child support office. Thank you very much for your service. Any other questions or comments from supervisors on this item? Hearing none, there is a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed with no? All right, motion carries. Just a quick reminder here before we go on to the next item. Those who are not currently speaking, please ensure that your phone or that your device is muted. The reminder. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Item 9B, honoring Terry Fell.
Is there a motion? Moved by
Renish will second.
Moved by Supervisor Davis, seconded by Supervisor Renish. And Supervisor Beaver, if you would please take us through this resolution.
It's my honor to be able to read this tonight about former Supervisor Terry Fell. He was an awesome man. You could always go for him if you had questions, advice. He had lots of stories to tell, entertaining in his police days in Beloit and on the county. Huge Cub fan, and right now the Cubs are winning 1-0 over Milwaukee. I'm sure he's having a heyday watching this game. And always wanted to talk about sports with you. He was so proud of his family. His grandsons would always go to all of their sporting events. In fact, you'd have to leave our meeting and say, Mary, you need to get this meeting done today because, got a whatever game, my grandson I'm going to. He was very proud of them, and he always let me know when Beloit Turner beat Evansville in any sports because, that was his hometown and mine. Awesome man. Last year at the county association, him and his wife took BJ and I out for supper one night and had a very nice time. He, like I said, he demonstrates what a human being should act like, and we should all try to, to walk in his footsteps because he was an honorable man. So, all right. So whereas Terry Fell in the Rock County community in a wide variety of service and with great sadness honors his passing on July 25th, 2020. Whereas Terry was a 1962 graduate of Beloit Memorial High School, was a 1966 graduate of Rock County Law Enforcement Academy, received an associate's degree in police science from Blackhawk Technical College in 1977, and earned a Bachelor of Science degree in police science from Milton College in 1980. And whereas Terry married Arlene Sue Johnson on May 14, 1966, and was a Vietnam War veteran, proudly serving his country with the U.S. Army. And whereas Terry started his law enforcement career with the Rock County Sheriff's Office in 1966 as a deputy and served as a patrol officer in Beloit from 1967 to 1970. And he returned to the city of Beloit Police Department as a patrolman and investigator until 1977. And whereas Terry served the Rock County Sheriff's Office as undersheriff from 1977 to 1981 and was chief deputy from 1982 to 1991. And whereas 1986, he attended and graduated from the FBI National Academy Session 143. In 1981, Terry went to Northeast Wisconsin Technical College, where he was recruit trainer and police science instructor, and worked as a law enforcement coordinator for Blackhawk Technical College from 1996 until 2005. During this time, he won the Coordinator of the Year award for the state of Wisconsin and was a certified instructor for the state of Wisconsin Traffic Safety Group Dynamics N. Whereas Terry served as a police chief in 2 communities, the village of Clinton from 1970 to 1971, and the city of Beloit from 1991 to 1996. And whereas Terry was a member of the Beloit Boys Baseball Association, the Rock County Law Enforcement Association, Blackhawk Technical College Law Enforcement Advisory Committee, and the Board of Directors for the Rock Valley Corrections Program. And whereas Terry served on the City of Beloit City Council from 1997 to 1999 and from 2001 to 2003. And whereas Terry served on the County Board from 2011 to 2020, representing District 14, and devoted many hours on the following committees: Long-Term Support Committee 2012 through 2017, including serving as chair from 2012 to 2017, Public Safety and Justice Committee 2015 through 2020, Human Services Board 2011 through 2020, Developmental Disabilities Board 2011 through 2014, Health Services Committee 2012 through 2018, Emergency Medical Advisory Council 2014 to 2020, Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee 2018 to 2020, Evidence-Based Decision Making and Ad Hoc Committee 2018 to 2020. And whereas Terry Fell's legacy continues in his son's Kurt service with the Rock County Sheriff's Office. And then we've got the whereas it resolved today. Like I said, Terry was an awesome person to know, and his death has left a big hole in not only our community of the Rock County, but also his family. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Beaver. Supervisor Baumkamp, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I'd just like to say a few things. I got to meet Terry about 30 years ago. I met him at a Badger game. And when I was introduced to him, I tell you, it was very intimidating. He was a very big man and carried himself very well, but he's the nicest guy you could ever meet. And that was great. His impeccable character, his integrity, it made him a great leader. The county was way better having him. If the current sheriff was looking to tell people who to model their career after, this is the guy they should model their career after. We're very lucky that we had him for as long as we did. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Baumkamp. Supervisor Williams, I see you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I echo the same comments that have gone before me. Supervisor Fell was a strong, gentle giant. He actually contacted me last year in in November, to ask me to consider running because he knew that he was not going to be running. And without his guidance and leadership, it would be challenging during this period of time that we all are experiencing. He is a true, he was a true servant to our community. He was born in Beloit, attended the educational system there, attended education at Black Hawk Tech, I believe. And he went on to Milton College. So he is a Rock County through and through learned person. Served also to the U.S. military and returned back home again to give service. Has a phenomenal family with his wife Arlene, his son Kurt, his wife and his children, as well as in-law. And I echo, if we ever are looking for someone to model our thought process and to be kind and considerate and respectful to others, we should definitely look to Supervisor Terry Fell. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Williams. Any other supervisors with comments at all?
Just that he's got to be pretty happy that the best team in baseball right now today is the Chicago Cubs.
Thank you, Supervisor Zajac. Any other supervisors? Hearing none, there was a motion and a second to approve this resolution. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, please.
Item 10, introduction of new resolutions or ordinances by supervisors for referral to appropriate committee.
And I do not believe, Marilyn, did you receive anything yet?
I have not.
Okay, and I have not either. Are there any other supervisors, though, who were wishing to introduce a resolution this evening? All right, hearing none. Next item, please.
Next item is 11, reports. We do not have any reports this evening. Item 12, new business. 12A, supplementary appropriations and budget changes. 12A1, accepting DOJ EBDM pretrial pilot sites project grant and amending the budget.
All right, is there a motion?
Wiley moves.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch who said that.
Supervisor Wiley.
I'll be
Okay,
your
moved
second.
All right, moved by Wildy, seconded by Zajac. And Supervisor Beaver, did you want to just give us the summary of this?
Yeah, as it says, they are accepting some money to do some pretrial pilots. You know, the executive summary really sums it up, and I'm not going to read it all, but if you have questions, that would be okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Beaver. Any questions at all regarding this particular resolution? All right, hearing none, there is a motion and a second. All those in favor of accepting the DOJ EBDM pretrial pilot sites project grant and amending the budget, please say aye.
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 Any opposed with no? All right, motion carries.
I
Madam Chair.
believe this has to be roll call.
Oh, sorry about that.
Could we ask for unanimous consent here?
I second that, if that's a motion.
Yes. So if there's a request for unanimous consent, then the chair would ask for objection. And if there's no objection, the vote is unanimous.
All right. Is there any objection? All right, hearing none. We have unanimous consent. Next item, please.
Item 12A2, awarding the contract for renovation of 1717 Center Avenue building and amending the 2020 facilities management capital budget.
Davis
All right.
moved.
Yeoman second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Supervisor Zajac, do you want to start us off with a summary here?
Is Brent here?
I believe I saw Brent. Yes, he is here.
Yes. Okay. Well, this is awarding the contract to JP Cullen. They didn't, we touched on this at the beginning of the meeting today. The first two bids that came in didn't end up meeting some of the requirements necessary to take on a job of this scope. There has been some conflict as far as the two companies who didn't receive the bid, and I know Brent is here, and I think that maybe if Mr. Greenlee can let us know that we're sitting in the right spot.
Thank you, Supervisor Zajac. I guess I'll hand it off. I'll hand it off to Brent then. And just again, just a reminder to supervisors and those in attendance, if you are not currently speaking, please mute your mics. We do have some background noise that is coming through from mics. So with that being said, Brent?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We did receive 8 bids, and we did evaluate all the bids and the contents of, as we indicated in the executive summary, 2 low bids were rejected. One to demonstrate, a project they listed was not actually a project that they did. They partnered with another company, so that didn't give them the ability to be able to complete the project. And then the next one in line was Osmond, and their bid, when we evaluated it, they listed in a list of some clarifications of items that was excluded from the bid that were required in the bid. And when that's tallied up together, they are no longer the next in line with the bidder. That puts Cullen's bid lower than theirs. So with that said, as we went forward with the resolution with Cullen, Osmond did file a written complaint to purchasing, opposed to that, and cited why they opposed to it. And at that point, myself, Rich, and Jody and Josh reviewed that and made a determination it was not valid, that indeed the decision we made was correct. And they were given an email notification of that. And since then, and they sent the email for public comment again of their feeling that they should be the next bidder. And then they cited why they felt that they should be, and your guys' memo that you received, as well as in the executive summary. I did list all the details on what we actually, the reason and how we came up with those. And there's maybe one topic that there was maybe of a discussion, but it still was a matter, it still put Cullen's bid less, regardless of what that one area that would maybe be questionable of yes or no. So the bids truly are, truly the way they are laid out and the way it was spelled out is clearly JP Cullen is the lowest, most responsible bidder on this project.
Thank you, Brent. Rich, did you have anything you wanted to add from the legal note side?
I don't have anything affirmative really to add. I would echo just everything that Brent said. I'm certainly happy to answer questions if there's questions about the process that we engaged in or the decisions that we made. But at this point, I would say I'm comfortable with purchasing's decision to reject the bid of Pacific and the bid of Osmond and go with the bid of JP Cullen as the lowest responsible bidder.
Thank you. Any supervisors with questions or comments at all?
Supervisor Davis,
Go ahead,
I was-
Supervisor Davis.
wondering if Brent could clarify for us the issue of contingency, if that's enough of a contingency fund to cover any unforeseen cost.
Yes, yes, the contingency I put on this project was 5%. The average is usually 5 to 10% on a renovation because you get into these areas of the unknowns. However, I went with the 5% on this one because if you get inside the building, it's pretty much a hollowed out building and it's some walls. And so I'm comfortable with the 5% versus going with the 10% and the fact that it is doing on the borrowing as well. So yes, I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you.
Supervisor Baumkamp?
So I got two questions on this. So are we required by law to go by low bid, or is that a city or a county policy? Or are we allowed to pick businesses that work in the county, the people, the residents here? Are we able to pick and choose, or is it pretty much set in stone that we have to no matter what?
Yeah.
So do you want to go, Brent, or you want me to?
Yep, nope, you go ahead. I can add it.
So what the law requires is that public works projects over a certain value are required to be let out to the lowest responsible bidder. So there are a number of areas where there is discretion and there are areas where there is no discretion. So we get to determine who is a responsible bidder. And we get to determine what the specifications are that we want the bid to meet when we put the bid out. So assuming that all of the bids that come in are determined to be from responsible bidders and meet the specifications, then we need to take the lowest one of those bids we're required to by law. In this case, what purchasing has determined is that the lowest bidder, which was Pacific Construction Services, was not a responsible bidder. As a part of the demonstration of responsibility, the company is required to demonstrate that they have performed work of similar size and scope in a previous occasion. That's a part of the bid package. The purchasing staff and facility staff did not feel like Pacific's bid demonstrated that, and so they were determined to not be a responsible bidder. With regard to Osmond omitted material aspects, the specifications, as a part of their bid. And in reviewing that with the architect, county staff felt like that would take their bid above really what they had bid it at. And so they were excluded because they didn't meet the minimum specifications that were required in the bid when they submitted their bid. So then excluding those two bids, we get to the third lowest bid, which was the bid from JP Cullen. So the bid is not being awarded because they're a Wisconsin company or because they're a local company. That basis for awarding a bid is actually prohibited in the public works requirements. They're being awarded because they are the lowest, most responsible bidder because the other two bids were rejected. Both Wisconsin statute and our ordinances specifically give purchasing staff the discretion to reject any bids that are not submitted that are in the best interest of the county. So.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question for Rich.
Go ahead, Supervisor Bryant.
What is their next option in this? Isn't this going to stall the start of the renovation?
I mean, I'd be lying if I said it was impossible that it would. It certainly, at any moment, as I think Josh has said, not infrequently, we can be sued at any moment for anything. And in those lawsuits, there can be delays based upon whatever the court may decide to do immediately to sort of preserve the status quo. That's a possibility. What I will say is that in looking at case law revolving around decisions of this nature, boards and governing bodies are given a certain amount of discretion to make determinations about when to reject bids. And within that discretion, there's a lot of legislative immunity. So I don't see this as being a particular high risk scenario. But again, I can't predict the future. I can't predict what a court will or won't do, it's certainly possible that we may get delayed in the start of construction if there was somebody decided to get litigious. That being said, if we were to award the bid to someone that we did not feel could complete the bid as it was designed to be completed, and there may be a bunch of delays during construction because of change orders or because the scope of work is not really within the institutional capabilities of that contractor, or because the contractor thought they were submitting a bid on one thing and it turns out that no, really it was something else. And so they may not be prepared to actually complete that work. And so there's, just because we're making this one decision, I don't know that the risk of delay is any greater than if we were to make another decision.
So if the date gets pushed back beyond what Cullen said that they could get the work completed, will that jeopardize them at all?
If Cullen has expressed to us that they're going to honor their bid, so assuming that we pass that the matter's approved tonight and we enter into a contract with them in a timely manner, I wouldn't anticipate that being an issue. I can't tell you that it won't be for sure again, but it's construction. There's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of moving variables, and so a lot of things are possible as time horizons get pushed down the road. I think especially given the current economic conditions that we are living in.
Thank you.
Any other supervisors with questions or comments? Supervisor Mulligan?
Yes, I just had a question for Terry and Rich, and that was, has this ever came up before in the past? When I was reading their letter here that was posted to the supervisors, it just reminded me of like communication on certain aspects of the project weren't, I don't know, deliberate, finalized, like there was some things that weren't addressed, maybe by one company where maybe Cullen went over the top. And I just am asking if you've ran into this before and on this extent, and with the next one, would you do something different, or does this thing just kind of happen with the large contracts like this?
Brent, do you want to talk about your experience contracting for large public works?
Yes. So there was nothing that JP Cullen did that was over the top. What it is we have to, by state statute, when it gets over that $25,000, and we talked about it before, even over 5,000 we have to bid, but 25,000 requires a full bid where you got to do a design, spec, and bid. So we can't do a design build. And in this case, the architect laid out the specifications. They were in the specifications. We did have addendum questions, and you get a timeline where everybody can ask questions about the specifications and trying to understand it, and then the architect responds. They're still able to ask all those questions and do that. In this particular case, both of them was very clear what was required in the specifications. It was just clearly spelled out it's not in there. It could have easily been missed and not looked at the clarification page and been found down the road. But the fact is because it was a higher project, we took a little more time reviewing and making sure that we were all bases was covered when we reviewed the bids. But really, there's nothing, even in the size. There's nothing. The specifications were spelled out, and we just got to make sure that the specifications are followed, so everybody's bidding the same thing.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of new to me, and I'm relying on your expertise and experience in these areas that, you know, you've ran into this before, whether it was the wording on the contract that these people were dickering on or bidding on. And I'm just thinking out loud that, you know, you've seen it before. We've been through this before. Was there something that we could do different that takes this away maybe on the next project is my thought process behind that. And I rely on your expertise there.
Yeah, and not on this particular project. We did do some changes on some of the other projects that, you know, I've gotten caught up on where, you know, you get 1,200 pages of bid spec and it's all boilerplate. And the architect might put in there, you know, run the piping this way, and it might be a computer project that doesn't have any piping with it. But they put it in to make sure they cover how that piping is supposed to be. So I did reach out to every one of our architects that we work with, you know, stating, you know, I don't want a scope of service blended in with some boilerplate that's hard to find, you know, because that's where it costs us change orders because it's not clear. We don't run it. So we are cleaning up quite a bit of that. But that particular, what we're doing there would not have helped this situation.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other supervisors with questions? Anyone else? All right, hearing none, there's a motion and a second, and this vote is roll call.
Move for unanimous consent.
Williams,
Yes.
I'll second.
Oh, so I'm sorry, I believe right before Lisa, you called Supervisor Williams's name. There was a request by Supervisor Wildy for unanimous consent, and that was seconded by Supervisor Zajac. Does anyone have any objections at all to this particular resolution? All right, hearing none, the item is approved by unanimous consent. Next item, please.
next item. Item A3, amending the 2020 Council on Aging budget to adjust the following Older Americans Act programs, Title 3B, C1, C2, Title 3D, NFC SP, AFC SP allocations.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll move it.
Moved by Supervisor Bryan. Is there a second?
Zajac.
Seconded by Supervisor Zajac. Supervisor Rashkin, can you give us a summary of this particular resolution?
I actually don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
I have, this is Paula Shutt from Council on Aging.
Go ahead, Paula.
I can give you a summary. Basically, what this is funding that we receive from the state that comes down through the federal government. And when we do the budget, it's estimated because we don't know the actual amounts until we get the budget from GWAR. So this is just changing the budget for the actual amounts once we got the contract.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from supervisors on this particular item? All right, hearing none, there is a motion and a second. This item is roll call.
For unanimous consent again.
Okay, we have another motion for unanimous consent. Is there a second?
Second, Rashkin.
Seconded by
I'll
Rashkin.
second that, but maybe I was confused. Do we need a second?
I believe so, yes. So there is a motion and a second. Supervisor Wildy made the motion, was seconded by Supervisor Rashkin. Are there any supervisors that are opposed? All right, hearing none, the item is approved by unanimous consent. Next item, please.
Next item, 12A4, amending the 2020 Council on Aging budget to accept FFCR and CARES funding.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, moved by Supervisor Rashkin, seconded by Supervisor Bryan. And Paula, if you would take us through this one as well, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
This extra financing is response to the COVID-19 situation. GWAR's awarded the county additional funding that was made available when the Family First Coronavirus Response Act and the Corona Aid Relief and Economic Security Act, the CARES Act, was put in place. So these additional funds are going to assist with the home delivered meal program, the Title IIIB programs, and the caregiver programs as well.
Thank you, Paula. Any questions or comments from supervisors?
I have a question, Supervisor Renish.
Yes, go
Are
ahead.
there funds available still in this? I'm just wondering if we may look at this as an opportunity to reach out with our Meals on Wheels program. Maybe there's more people I'm sure needing or wanting Meals on Wheels and the funds aren't there. Maybe we could use some of the coronavirus funds to aid with that.
Are you speaking of the meals that the county does for the home delivered meals?
Yes.
That's basically what a lot of the funding is for, because those meals
Okay.
are growing a lot. We have gotten a lot more people. signing
Yeah.
up for those home delivered
Okay.
meals. So,
Good.
yeah, so we're already doing that.
Good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions at all from supervisors?
Supervisor Yeomans has a question.
Go ahead, Supervisor Yeomans.
Thank you very much. Will these funds meet the additional costs associated with what we're doing, or will we still be needing more money?
No, they will meet the additional cost. And we were given the ability to transfer some funds as well from the congregate program to the home delivered meal program, because during this COVID situation, we are required to report all of the meals that we serve as home delivered meals. Even our, we have grab and go meals, and the people that used to meet at the congregate dining centers are now driving in, picking up their pre-packed meal and taking it home to eat. We don't meet as a group because the senior centers are closed. So all of these meals are now counted by the GWAR, by the state, as home delivered. But we do have enough funding to cover it all, so we won't require any county money.
Good, glad to hear it. Thank you very much. Good job getting it.
Thank you. Any other supervisors with questions or comments? All right, hearing none, there is a motion and a second. And this is roll call. Oh. Sorry, Supervisor Taylor?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask for unanimous consent.
Okay.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second for unanimous consent. Are there any supervisors opposed? Are there any supervisors opposed? All right, hearing none. Resolution is approved via unanimous consent. Next item, please.
Next item is 12A5, amending the 2020 Human Services Department budget to accept the COVID Behavioral Health Grant.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion? Moved by Knudsen. Is there a second?
Second by Bostwick.
All right, so there is a motion and a second. And Supervisor Knudsen, can you just give us a summary of this particular item?
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The grant provides funding in the areas of peer specialist programming, support for first responders in Rock County, and access to safe and sober housing. This funding supplements a partnership with Rock Valley Community Programs to the existing peer specialist program. The grant also provides funding for the Rock County Sheriff's Office to oversee a coordinator who will organize and manage the critical incident stress management process among first responders in Rock County. We would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions at all from supervisors? All right, hearing none, there is a motion and a second. And this item is roll call vote.
Madam Chair, request unanimous consent.
Okay, is there a second?
Second by Shirley Williams.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any supervisors in opposition to this resolution? All right, hearing none, resolution is approved with unanimous consent. Next item, please.
Next item. Item 12A6, amending the 2020 HSD budget to accept CLTS funds and creating a 2.0 FTE Human Services professional positions.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Moved by Knutson.
Okay, is there a second?
Seconded Wiley.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Supervisor Knutson, could you give us a summary of this one as well, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This resolution authorizes to create 2 Human Services Department professionals. These positions will be responsible for coordinating services for children in Rock County who have a disability eligible for children's long-term support. The increase in case managers will help us meet the waitlist elimination requirement. We would appreciate your support.
Thank you, Supervisor Knutson. Any questions at all on this particular resolution? All right, hearing none, there is a motion and a second. And this is roll call.
Madam Chair, I'd like to ask the board for
Okay,
And
we have
a
a
second.
motion and a second to approve by unanimous consent. Are there any supervisors opposed?
Can I have a clarification on who's the first and the second?
Yes, I believe Supervisor Bryan made the motion and Supervisor Taylor seconded.
Thank you.
Any supervisors opposed? All right, hearing none, the resolution is approved by unanimous consent. Next item, please.
Next item, 12A7, authorizing purchase of replacement motor pool vehicle for facilities management, Super Duty truck, and amending the 2020 budget.
All right, is there a motion?
Supervisor Yeomans moves.
Okay, is there a second?
Moini second.
Supervisor Mosquito second.
Okay, I believe I heard Supervisor Moini first. So we do have a motion and a second on this one. Supervisor Richard, did you want to give us a summary for this particular item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that the notes explain it pretty well.
Thank you, Supervisor Richard. Any questions at all from supervisors? All right, hearing none, there is a motion and a second. This is roll call.
Madam Chair, move for unanimous consent.
Okay, is there a second?
Second by Bostwick.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve with unanimous consent. Are there any supervisors opposed? Hearing none, resolution passes with unanimous consent. Next item, please.
Next item is 12B, contracts. We do not have any contracts this evening. Item 12C, extending the deadline for the work group to study the high nitrates levels in Rock County groundwater.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Supervisor Peer.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Sweeney and a second by Supervisor Peer. Supervisor Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This resolution extends the term of the groundwater nitrate work group until December 31, 2025. The Land Conservation Committee and the Board of Health and representatives of other committees request this extension. The work group is gathering data from our monitoring wells on the county farm while promoting a farmer-led groundwater work group. We are partnering with Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and the Natural Resources Conservation Service and others to develop a 9-key element plan and nitrate reduction strategies using best management practices. We are also involved in acquiring a source water protection project in the Turtle Creek watershed. Also included is a national water quality incentive in the southeast Rock County to measure groundwater responses. And we'll see those groundwater, those two groundwater issues probably tied together in the future.
Thank you, Supervisor Sweeney. Are there any questions at all? All right, hearing none, there is a motion and a second. All those in favor of approval, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any opposed with no? All right, motion carries. Next item, please.
Item 12D, support of LRB 3342-1 to increase state's minimum wage.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Renish will move.
Okay. Moved
Second,
Supervisor-
Zajac.
Moved by Supervisor Renish, seconded by Supervisor Zajac. Supervisor Schultz?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. First of all, it increases Wisconsin minimum wage to $15 over a 5-year period. After the 5-year period, it requires the minimum wage to be annually indexed to inflation. And the third provision repeals the provisions that prohibits cities, villages, towns, and counties from enacting and administering a minimum wage. So some of the other things that are significant to look at is this bill repeals provisions that requires a separate lower minimum wage for tipped employees and the ability to promulgate rules for tips and similar gratuity towards the payment of a minimum wage. What they're trying to deal with here is, for example, many of the people that were waiters and waitresses are paid $2.33 an hour. And many of them, if their shift is not very busy, they could be taking home that as their minimum, as their wage for the day, or slightly above it, but they're not making even the minimum of $7.25. The other things they're looking at is they're going to be, instead of requiring, DWD will be required to establish a minimum wage for opportunity employees, agricultural employees, and others to address the minimum wage workers, that it be fair and equitable. Are there any other questions?
At this time, I'll open it up for questions or comments from supervisors. Supervisor Baumkamp?
Yeah, I'm all in favor of raising minimum wage, but I don't think this is the time. I don't we with COVID going on, these people are probably might lose their jobs. I just listened to an expert on restaurant businesses, and he said 40% of all restaurant businesses in the United States are going to go out of business because of this. If we implement this, I understand it's over 5 years, but what's going to happen next year or 2 years from this? I think it can be make a dramatic change on that industry. I do think they deserve more money. I tip well when I'm there if it's good service and they make good money. But for us to do this at this time, you're not listening to small business owners if you approve this, because this is really impacting them, and to make them pay more out of their pocket to put them out of business, I don't want nothing to be part of. So I'm going to vote no against this resolution at this time. A year from now, maybe.
I would like to address some of the comments made.
Supervisor Schultz, I'm going to let some of the other supervisors make comments first, and then we'll cycle back to you, okay?
All right, thank you.
Supervisor Williams?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know that we hear a lot about what a burden it is to the proprietor or the owner of a particular business to increase the wage of their employee. I just wanted to state what $7.25 an hour amounts to. If you work in 8 hours in one day, that's $58. Again, I state $58. If you work for an entire year, the full-time expected hours, which is 2,080 hours, you will earn $15,080. And that is before any tax deduction, $15,080. Dividing that by 12, you will earn $1,256.67 per month. Again, $1,256.67 per month. This resolution is not saying that the dollars or the increase needs to occur immediately to $15 an hour. There's also some balance in there that ties it to some other calculators to adjust depending on what the cost of living is. I, for one, am in support of this. I know what a struggle it is as an individual, and definitely as a family, whether you have 1 or 2 children, to survive on, again, $58 a day. And that's one of the reasons we have so many people, I believe, stressed, working 2 jobs, sometimes 2 full-time jobs, sometimes 1.5 jobs, just trying to make their basic needs. $15 an hour, in case some of you guys are wondering, eventually, if we ever get that there in 5 years, because it's not guaranteed that we'll get there in 5 years, it would be $2,600 a month, or $31,200 a year. Again, imagine trying to feed yourself. If you get 8 hours on $7.25 an hour in an 8-hour period, which is $58. Thank you again.
Thank you, Supervisor Williams. Supervisor Renish has her hand raised.
Yeah, I'd like to say 2 things on this. I've always been a proponent of paying workers paying them a full wage and enough to make a living. I have a few things that have come into my life or have happened in my life over the last year or so that that really make me agree with that even more. One of them is COVID. I think one of my jobs has been cut down or cut off because of COVID, and I'm struggling, and I know I'm not the only one. And as Supervisor Baumkamp said, this may affect the restaurant industry. On the other hand, I think COVID has shown, if anything, that people do need to be paid, especially essential workers need to be paid what they're worth. And this whole pandemic highlights that these workers are worth at least minimum wage, if not more, as they are the ones that are, front line or not front line, but they are the essential workers. They are providing us our food, in most cases, all the items that we need on the front line. Secondly, the letter that was written in by the constituent stating that minimum wage jobs are not meant for full-time workers supporting families. Actually, that's not true. That's exactly what minimum wage was created for, was to support families. And on that point, stating that it's okay for a high school worker to make minimum wage, but not someone who raises a family is absolutely incorrect. That goes against everything, paying a worker what they're worth. Why should, for example, my daughter get paid less, get paid minimum wage to do the exact same job that a 50-year-old woman is doing in the same position, making $3, $4 more an hour just because she's older? That's not fair either. And then lastly, I will shut up after this, but just think for a second, if these high school workers and college workers were making $15 an hour, think of how much less student debt they would have. Over half of what they make, if my daughter was making anywhere near $15 right now, I wouldn't be in the position I'm in trying to figure out how to send her to college next year. So, yeah, this might affect restaurant workers in the short term. One, they should have been paying them their full wage to begin with, in my opinion. But two, this is going to benefit people much more than it's going to hurt restaurant workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Ennish. Supervisor Zajac?
Yeah, I wanted to emphasize a little bit on that too. It's been 12 years since it's been raised. I mean, if these businesses were operating 12 years ago and didn't adjust income, didn't adjust pay or prepare for that, then me for one would be more than willing to pay more money when I go out to eat. That's something I don't have to do. And if it means that more people are making money that suits time being used for labor, you're buying somebody's time. And with COVID, there should be probably a bit of a recognition of that, because time is kind of important in how we use it and how we spend it. It's long overdue. It's ludicrous. It still hasn't happened, and I'm going to vote in favor of it.
Thank you, Supervisor Zajac. Supervisor Lowcrantz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say, in my professional life, I work with students who are the high school range and early 20s. A lot of them come from the economically disadvantaged situations where they would be working minimum wage jobs. I can't explain, I can't do it enough justice to explain how much or how hard it is to break out of that cycle. A lot of the students that we have who were dropouts, because they either had to drop out to help take care of a family member, or they had something happen to them that they're homeless, etc. That they couldn't break out of the cycle. So often they end up relying on the minimum wage jobs, and then it's a repetitive cycle, because then these students are then now relying on a minimum wage job that they are living below the poverty line, and then if they have children, and it's a cycle that is kind of spiraling out of control. So I think that the minimum wage is definitely needs to be raised, but it's just it's very hard, and sometimes I think, I think we can all agree on that the wheels of government move extremely slowly, and the odds of this is a referendum that is going to be put forward, and if it's passed, it's going to be more an advisory. The odds of our state legislature right now passing this is probably incredibly low. So, you know, I don't think we need to necessarily worry about it being acted on right away during an age of COVID. Thank you.
Okay, I see Supervisor Mulligan has his hand raised, and then Supervisor Aguilar.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to comment to everybody here that as we currently sit, Wisconsin in the neighboring states has the lowest minimum wage, as we are below a border town along the Mississippi, where you could lose a lot of people going across the border to do the same type of work that's paid more in another state. So whether you want to pick $15 an hour as a bottom of the floor for minimum wage, I believe it should be raised. So Wisconsin, people aren't leaving to get a minimum wage job in another state that does pay more. As a simple fact, I think you just need to be competitive, and I believe some of those things happen, whether we talk about it or not. I believe it does happen. So whether you want to go to $15 or $12 or whatever, I believe that there should be some movement on the low end of the wage scale. So Wisconsin and Rock County in particular remain competitive. And thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Mulligan. Supervisor Aguilar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to weigh in. I also support this resolution. Our neighbors to the south in Illinois are on track to have a $15 minimum wage by 2025. And so Supervisor Mulligan is right. Many of us would definitely be crossing the border to make more money. That's not that far away from us. If you read the report from Dan Cunningham, the average wages are already well above the minimum. And so this isn't maybe as much of a leap. If you look at the youth workers, I personally get to be a supervisor for someone who is under 16. She works as hard and does just as well as someone who's 18 who used to work for me. And I'm happy to pay her well above the minimum wage, and she deserves it and is saving for college, and I'm glad that she can do that. And Target is starting people out at, I believe, $15 an hour. Whole Foods is starting people out at $15 an hour, and that's their basic base wage, and it's you know, they recognize that that's what they have to do to be competitive, and it's awfully nice when you have employees who can afford to shop at your store. It definitely boosts your bottom line. We have to talk about how much this would boost the economy, because we know that low wage workers are more likely to spend that money because they're meeting their basic needs and maybe fixing some things on their car or their house, and less likely to put it somewhere where it won't see the light of day for a long time. This money is going to go right into the economy, and it's going to boost the economy. I'm willing to pay 17 cents more for my fast food burger or whatever it is that they say this is going to do to costs, but people in general would be able to afford more and stimulate the economy more. Thank you.
All right, any other supervisors who haven't had a chance to weigh in yet on this particular item that would like to either ask a question or make a comment?
Supervisor Holman.
Go ahead, Supervisor Holman.
Thank you, Chair.
Listening to the debate at hand, and it makes me take pause and to consider some things that some of the supervisors have mentioned. And one was that maybe not the time to consider something like this. That has been a story that has been mounted for years, why minimum wage has not moved forward. Granted, it is a very lousy time right now. That is to be said. But that is always the argument that will be used going forward, a year from now or even further. The people who are out there working for minimum wage at now to support family or whatever is going on has been undoubtedly not enough to support a family. The minimum wage also has not been effective for years in that attribute. And going forward, a person has only got so many years, and this is based on time, to go out and earn a living. As a young person, they say minimum wage, that's what you should get. But an older person is still working at that minimum wage, trying to support a home. That doesn't work. And that has been clearly shown in this discussion. And seeing those things very clearly right now, the one thing that has not been put out there, and if we do pause this and not vote on it to a later time, or don't want to do it, can somebody explain to me how we can stop the cost of living going up so a person who's living on minimum wage can make that stretch that far? Because I just went to the gas station the other day, and I dropped, what, $35. And the statement was made a little earlier that a person's only making, I believe, what was it, $50 or something like that for a day? Look, where do you get somewhere ahead on this? The person is slowly just drowning in the sea of debt. So there is no clear benefit for waiting. We've been waiting for years for this to happen. And in this, I'll end at this point, but I fully stand to also vote for the raise of the minimum wage. There's no good time. I know the argument's going to be there forevermore, but there is no good time, but there is a good time because we can act on it now. Thank you.
Any other supervisors who haven't had a chance to speak yet?
Madam Chair, Brian Knutson.
Go ahead, Supervisor Knutson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not doubting in any way, shape, or form that the minimum wage needs to be increased. The few concerns that I have in just looking at myself and others that I know, how will this impact the county down the road, even in 5 years, if the minimum wage was increased to $15? I mean, some of us, it's taken 15 years to get to $15 an hour, picking away a little bit every year. Should you get fast tracked, some employees are going to be sunset at $17 an hour for the balance of their career. How are you going to adjust for all that if you've got people that it's taken 15 years, 16 years to get to $15 an hour? They're peaked out in their tier pay scale is a little bit higher than that. How do you balance that? That's just my question.
Wow.
Thank you, Supervisor Knutson. I also believe I saw Supervisor Bostwick with a comment, or was I mistaken on that? Rich?
I wasn't, but I guess I will.
Oh, okay.
I
have been really debating this for a while, but when I heard Supervisor Zajak's statistic that the minimum wage has not been raised in 12 years, I wondered why that was. The last 12 years in the state have been some of the most prosperous in the state's history, yet nothing has happened. So here we are trying to play catch up with the other states in the Midwest. And this is the action we have to take. And if people are going to get upset that we're doing this, I think their anger is misguided. Their anger should go to the people who over the last 12 years, last 12 years of prosperity have done nothing to move this along. So here we are playing catch up. And I think the time has come. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bostwick. I do recall Supervisor Schultz, I owe getting back to you here, and I know that Supervisor Williams, I see that you also have your hand raised, but before I give you both another chance here to speak, I just want to make sure that all the supervisors who haven't spoken yet have had an opportunity to speak before I go back and allow anyone to speak a second time. So is there anyone else who hasn't had a chance to speak on this particular item yet, wishing to speak at this time?
Supervisor Peer would like to.
Go ahead, Supervisor Peer.
Thank you. I'd just like to draw one area, and I agree with, this is an exceptional time, exceptional virus that we have to deal with and all that, and the budgets, all of that. It just gets really complicated. But one thing that really strikes me, a couple things were mentioned about education. It's just a little pet peeve that I have, that I think it's common knowledge that young people that go to college, a lot of them end up with tremendous amounts of debt. But you don't see education lowering their tuition. You don't see professors halting the advancement that they get in their salary advancement schedule and so on. It's just a little pet thing that I have, and it's nice that we can look at it and say, well, maybe we should make an adjustment for the people here, but you don't see people like that making their adjustment. It just seems totally unfair, and as long as they do that and they have the influence in our society not to do that, they kind of get away with it, and everybody else tries to make an adjustment. It's one of those things that's bigger than we are, but it just seems totally unfair. And I thought I might say something about it. There's a lot of things like that Rich is right. For the last 12 years, 15 years, our society's done very well. And a lot of businesses and areas have advanced and become very wealthy because of it. But students are left with big loans, interest rates that are just totally unreal. And you don't see them making compensation for that now. Even now, we're sitting here and we're debating this thing, and we want to help people out somehow. But where is their voice? Where are they bending over? In fact, I even heard recently that tuition was even already taken in before, and people had already made arrangements for dorms, and now they're not even going to need dorms because they're not going to have classes on campus. They're going to have the internet, and they're going to work with that. Are they going to make an adjustment for that? And I know I'm picking on them and being critical of that, but at the same time, I'm using it as an example that everybody needs to come to the plate and be fair. And we need to call some of these people out. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Peer. Any other supervisors who haven't had a chance to speak yet?
Supervisor Yeoman just has a question.
Go ahead, Supervisor Yeomans.
Thank you. If we look at the resolution and we go to the line 28 and labeled F, and it says that the legislation will allow local units of government to set minimum wage rates for their political boundaries. What's the point of having a state minimum wage? If this passes, we don't need a state minimum wage because every government unit will be able to set whatever wage they want.
I guess that's maybe a question for Rich. Do you want to take that one as far as how that's worded?
Yeah, so, and I don't have the act in front of me. I had it up earlier and now I've closed it. And so, but I believe that what the, so, and I can give a little legislative history on this. So maybe 8 years ago or so, the city of Madison increased its minimum wage unilaterally. And in response, within maybe weeks of that, the legislature enacted a specific provision in the workforce development laws that prohibited units of local government from enacting their own minimum wage. So the way that the previous legislative scheme worked is that there was a floor set by the state that everyone had to obey, and then units of local government could increase that floor beyond the minimum. And so what the current act does is delete the line in the statutes that prohibits units of local government from setting their own minimum wages, so that, again, you would have the state minimum wage of eventually $15 be the floor, and then units of local government could set a higher minimum wage, for instance, in places like Dane County and Milwaukee, where the cost of living may be substantially higher and where it may be they may feel it's warranted to have a higher minimum wage. I believe that's how the act is structured.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from supervisors who haven't spoken yet? Okay, then I will start going back through with the supervisors who wish to readdress the board. Let's try to keep this to, if you already commented once, you get one more chance to comment, because we're running pretty long in this particular debate. So, and quite a few items yet to cover. So please, if this is your second time speaking, try to keep your remarks brief and to the point so that we can get through everybody a second time who wishes to speak a second time. With that being said, I will start with Supervisor Schultz.
Yes, one of the things I wanted to point out is when this goes back and the legislature is back in session, it would be at least a minimum, if everything went well, 9 months before anything could be enacted. And that would start off at $8.50 for the following year. That would be locked in for that period of time. That is, I think, also an attempt to address some of the concerns about the COVID. But then it goes, after the first year, it goes to $10, the third year to $11.50, the fourth year to $13, the fifth year to $14, and then $15, and then thereafter is indexed to account for inflation. If there's no inflation, it would not be increased. Some of the other things that are worth looking at that were brought to my attention were the cost of living to provide for a 2-bedroom apartment in Madison would require $21.02 to pay for that apartment. And so it would require $725 times 3 to get to that rate. That is why they are putting in a provision to allow areas like that have higher costs of living, the ability to adjust for their costs. The other things that was pointed out, Wisconsin has some of the highest costs for childcare. To put one child in a child-based center care, it's $12,552 for the year. They can't make it on $725. Honestly, it is well needed to go to 15 and therefore to slowly adjust upward so people can try to keep a much better pace. I'm asking for the support. I'm also pointing out that some of the people that are waitresses, that they are supporting families. And when you're taking home less than even $7.25, that's not fair. Give them a chance to take care of their families. I'm asking you to support this bill. This is a legislative draft. It will be taken up in the next session by Melissa Schreiber. She is being reelected, and that was her intent. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Williams?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I just want to remind everybody that this resolution is asking us, my understanding, to be supportive of the legislative draft. Was just stated, at most it's going to take 9 months for any action on this if it passes through the state, and that's a big if. It's not saying that Rock County is implementing this now. And with that, it will probably be to 2022. It could be 2021, but it probably would be 2022 before the $8.50 would be implemented. For 8 hours, $8.50 equals $68. We're talking about almost a year, or maybe a year and a half. And people would get a $10 raise. Per month, it would be $1,473.34. And annually, it would be $17,680, which is roughly a little over $2,000 a year. Again, I would ask people to think, how are you going to survive off of an 8-hour shift of $68, making $8.50 if this passes in a year and a half or 2 years? When again, the cost of living may have increased even more. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Williams. Supervisor Agutter, and then Supervisor Zajac. I believe you had your hand raised there for a second. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick comment. I was a server, to use the gender neutral term for waitress. I was a server in Minnesota 20 years ago, and I did make minimum wage plus tips. So they are 20 years ahead of us on that. And so I think we just need to keep up with the times, keep up with our neighbors here.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Agutter. Supervisor Zajac.
Yep. I just wanted to touch on something. You know, if you worked real hard to get to $15 an hour, or if you make 17, 18, 19, whatever, let that not be the reason why you would want to hold somebody else down, I guess. Why would we plant a tree, right? We're not really going to see the fruits of it, but we still do it anyway. At some point in time, and it's overdue, we need to be thinking about how to better off rather than comparing somebody else's situation to your own. That's it.
Thank you, Supervisor Zajac. Supervisor Renish.
Just to piggyback a little bit of what Supervisor Zajac was saying, I think about that a lot. And also, we're not saying that minimum wage jobs are the only jobs that are underpaid. So this would be a catapult for other positions, other companies to reevaluate their pay structure. And if you make $18 or $19 an hour now, maybe you will go up a little bit because of this. So it could help more than just the actual workers making minimum wage. Thank you.
Any other supervisors wishing to weigh in at this time? All right, hearing none, based on the amount of discussion we've had on this particular item with folks reporting being for and also against, I believe it's probably in our best interest to do this as a roll call vote. So Lisa, whenever you're ready.
Podzilny? Russ?
Yes.
Holman?
Run, Davey.
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Zajac?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Yeomans?
No.
Egger?
Yes.
Beaver?
Yes.
Grenish?
Yes.
Greshkin?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Mulligan?
Yes.
Rich Bostwick?
Yes.
Pam Bostwick?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Kier?
Yes.
Wildy?
Yes.
Lowkrantz?
Yes.
Gustina?
No.
Levy?
Yes.
Schultz?
Yes.
Mawhinney?
No.
Potter?
Yes.
Baumkamp?
No.
Brian?
Yes.
Sweeney?
No.
Fox?
No.
Richard?
No.
Purviance?
Yes.
$22 yes, 7 no.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next item, please.
Next item. Item 12E, initial borrowing resolution authorizing general obligation bonds and or notes in an amount not to exceed $22,610,000.
Winnie moves.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yeoman second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Supervisor Mawhinney, did you want to talk about this one or?
I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It's a preliminary resolution authorizing
Very good.
borrowing of the funds.
Very good. And I do believe Sherry's on the line as well. If any supervisors have any questions at all regarding this particular item. Any questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of approval, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, next item, please.
Do we want to do a roll call on this one?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I was just going to say. We need, roll call, 2/3 vote.
Yep, sorry
Okay,
about that.
sorry.
Okay,
Madam Chair, can I move for unanimous consent?
would that be appropriate in this case, Rich?
So This is a little bit different. I'll be honest. I don't know definitively yes or no. I think it's safest. There are requirements with regard to general obligation bonds, excuse me, about the number of supervisors in favor being over the 2/3 threshold. And so I think it would be safest if we just kind of wore the belt and suspenders on this and did the roll call.
Motion withdrawn. Yeah. Thank you.
Potter,
Yes.
Weldy,
Yes.
Holman,
Yes.
Momkamp,
Yes.
Justina,
Yes.
Rich Bostwick,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Fox,
Yes.
Beaver,
Yes.
Yeomans,
Yes.
Mulligan,
Yes.
Lowkrantz,
Yes.
Podzolny,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Pierre,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Zajac,
Yes.
Pam Bostwick,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Mulwiney,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Sweeney,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Egger,
Yes.
Reshkin,
Yes.
Renish,
Yes.
Purviance.
Yes.
29 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next item, please.
Next item, item 12F, F, authorizing application with Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources for county conservation aid.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Richard moves.
Thank
Mulwiney,
you. Is there-
second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Supervisor Richard, is there a summary for this item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is simply authorization to apply for parks to apply for a grant.
Thank you. Any questions at all from supervisors?
Can I have a clarification on the second?
Yes, Mulwiney seconded.
Thank you.
Any questions at all from supervisors? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed with no? Motion carries. Next item, please.
Next item, 12G, City of Janesville Stormwater Ordinance Exception,
Moved by Fox.
exemption.
I believe that
Jen.
was moved by, was that moved by Fox?
Yes.
Okay.
Seconded by Podzolny.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Supervisor Fox, would you like to give us just a summary of this? I see Mr. Collins also on the line as well.
Not a problem, thank you. This resolution is designed to give the Southern Wisconsin Regional Airport an exemption on the stormwater fees that we pay for public infrastructure at the airport, taxiways, runways, connection ramps, et cetera. These surfaces are bought and paid for with taxpayer dollars. They're part of the overall infrastructure for an airplane. They are roads. We don't pay, nobody pays stormwater fees for any other highways, roadways, We certainly don't pay for our county roads. City of Janesville doesn't charge itself for its own city streets, et cetera. And I would ask that everybody support this. It will save the county airport a substantial amount of money.
Thank you, Supervisor Fox. Any questions at all from supervisors? Supervisor Baumkamp?
I'm going to abstain from this vote.
Okay. Thank you. Any other
Madam-
supervisors with questions or comments?
Madam Chair, the Supervisor Lowcrantz.
Go ahead, Supervisor Locran.
Do we know why the fees are going up? Is it an increased amount of rainwater, or what was the reason why the fees are rising?
Supervisor Fox, did you want to go ahead?
I would ask that Greg Collin address that question.
Okay.
Sure. Can everybody hear me? I'm having a little audio trouble, I think.
We can, Greg.
Yeah. Okay, great. Can't see me, but you can hear me. That's great. Yes, so the fees have been increasing since 2017, very significantly each year. We do get credits with that. We are getting the maximum allowable credits, but the fees continue to go up. I can't tell you as to why. You'd have to ask somebody from the city of Janesville, but that's what we hope to do. I can tell you that the last 2 years, they've gone up from in 2018 paying about 48,000 to 2019 to about 75,000, and this year we're going to estimate it to pay about $94,000 in strictly stormwater fees. So, and that's with getting the maximum allowable credits.
Supervisor Locran, oh, go ahead, Josh.
I was gonna say, maybe I can contribute to answer his question as well, just conceptually how the city funds its stormwater program. And so all residents, all property owners, say in the city, contribute toward stormwater fees. And so to the extent that the city has expanded its stormwater program, so it's doing some infrastructure improvements, the costs of that are spread out among those who fund the program, so including the airport. So one of the reasons, at least, that the costs are going up is that costs have gone up for everyone because of the city increasing the amount it's spending on stormwater improvements in the city.
Supervisor Locrantz, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Any other questions from supervisors? Yes, Supervisor Bennett.
Peer.
I'll come back to you, Supervisor Peer.
I just have a general question. Does the current stormwater fees have anything to do with PFAS? And I've heard that PFAS is higher because of the de-icer that they use at the airports? And so I'm just wondering, is that maybe why? Is it anything to do with that as to why it might be that you're being charged the stormwater, that they're being charged the stormwater in other parking lots and highways or not?
No, to answer your question, PFAS is an agent in firefighting foam. And although that is a statewide issue right now, it has nothing to do with at least in my opinion, has nothing to do with the increased rates as they keep going up significantly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Peer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering if the numbers seem astronomical, but are the rates going up the same at the airport for this as it would be stormwater for other property owners? And then, well, I guess that's what I was mainly concerned about. And then if that isn't in the pie, so to speak, then is that going to make everybody else's rate go up even higher?
I can answer that, the first part of that. Each residential household is considered one ERU, and you pay the same rate with one ERU as we pay the rate for 1,980 ERUs. So the rate will stay the same. I don't want to speak too much for the city of Janesville, but if they take money away from one area, they'll have, I would assume they will have to find money elsewhere. Much like we have our budget, they have their budget. So, but that's for them to consider, in my opinion.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Fox,
Go ahead, Supervisor Fox.
just a comment, just for what it's worth. None of the stormwater at the airport goes into the stormwater system. The airport is not served by the stormwater system.
Thank you, Supervisor Fox. Any Supervisor Zajac?
Yeah, for either Brent or Mr. Cullen, the resolution indicates another airport was successful in doing this. Was that the first one? Is this something that's just kind of being recognized?
Great question. So I have talked with my peers across the state on this topic. Eau Claire is the one that mentioned in the resolution that was successful working with their city, and they are county owned as well, in recognizing this exemption from their stormwater fees. I can tell you that other airports are approaching their governments, local governments, in similar fashion. But I don't think anybody has been to the point where we are today at this meeting. But I do suspect they will also pursue the same thing.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I do have a comment that may help. I don't know if it would or not.
Go ahead, Brent.
Yes. So the stormwater is part of, even facilities, we pay a stormwater fee, and it's based on the building where the water can't soak into the ground. That's where they come up with the IEUs, and you're billed accordingly to that. And much like Supervisor Fox indicated, out at the airport, because there's so much runway, that makes a lot of non-pervious area. That all that water runoff from the runways are onto the land. The nearest stormwater grate is on the other side of 11 bypass, so that water doesn't even get to that. This fee is really to cover the cost of the infrastructure and the maintenance that it takes to maintain the stormwater system, and that's part of the reason why that is. And I just wanted to add that comment.
Thanks, Brent. Any other supervisors with questions? Supervisor Renish?
Who absorbs the cost if it is taken away from the airport? Would it be the citizens equally, or would there just not be that? I mean, I'm just confused about what would, where that would go.
I can try to answer that.
Thanks.
So yes, conceptually, the way they fund the stormwater program is through these fees on any property in the city of Janesville. So again, unless they come up, as Greg indicated, unless they come up with a different funding scenario, somebody had used the reference to a pie. So if we were no longer in that pie, then those fees in theory would be spread among other property owners in the city of Janesville.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed with no?
No.
No.
Did you get the 2 no votes, Lisa? Supervisor Renish and Supervisor Gustina. You're on mute.
Is Supervisor Baumkamp abstaining?
Yes, and Supervisor Baumkamp is abstaining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next item, please.
Next item, 12H, banning display of Confederate flag.
Renish will move.
Moved by Egger.
Okay, so we have a motion by Renish, a second by Egger. Supervisor Egger, if you would just give us a summary of the resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some Rock County citizens requested this when we did the resolution condemning the death of George Floyd. The Confederate flag has a history of being used to intimidate people of color, and it creates a hostile environment. This resolution simply bans display on county property by county employees. It doesn't have an effect outside of that. And we do not have the authority to ban anything outside of those parameters because of freedom of speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Egger. Any supervisors with questions or comments regarding this resolution?
The Supervisor Yeomans has a question.
Supervisor Williams, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Confederate flag represents more than just what it means to people who are non-white. It originally was the flag of the Confederate States. It flew from March 4th, 1861 through March 1st, 1863, has the stars in blue. And the flag represented, and still does to a lot of people, it represented the right of the states who decided to secede from the United States of America. That resulted in the Civil War of this country, which those states actually lost. And after the South lost seceding from the United States of America, it became the flag most associated with the Confederate States that had again agreed that they would leave the United States of America and fought a war to leave the United States of America. It does represent white supremacy through the Civil War, 1861 through 65. In the 20th century, particularly in 1948, there was a newly founded party called the Dixiecrat, and they adopted the flag as a system of resistance to the federal government. And I would ask people to think about this. The state of Mississippi recently removed the Confederate flag from their state flag. Mississippi was one of the states that actually participated in the secession and was actively involved in the Civil War. This represents more than just how people who are non-white feel. And yes, it is offensive to those of us who fall in that category. But it also represents leaving the United States of America. Please remember that as you cast your vote. Thank you.
Supervisor Yeomans has his hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Please understand that I have no wish to fly the Confederate flag, and I understand that it is offensive to many people. But I have a couple of questions regarding the responsibility of the county toward its employees if this passes. Is this going to be a condition of employment, for example? Are we not going to hire anybody that may have a Confederate flag on their car or in their house? And how are we going to police that? Number one. Number two, if it's not a condition of employment, is there going to be some sort of punishment? And if there's no consequence for flying the Confederate flag other than just we ban it, it has no effect. And so I'm just trying to figure out what the practicality of enforcement is. Can somebody explain that to me, please?
I believe, Josh, would you like to address that?
I guess certainly I can address that. I guess I would see if Annette is on the call still, if she wants to address some of the HR implications as far as discipline or other policy might go.
Sure. So if this resolution passes, as was said by one of the comments right at the beginning of the meeting, it would impact anything that an employee would have on their car in a county-owned parking lot. So we would have to have supervisors look at vehicles that are in the parking lot. And if somebody's car in a parking lot was to be in violation of this resolution, then we would have to address it through our regular process. I mean, we would hope that the supervisor would be able to engage the employee in a dialogue, and that would be enough to correct the behavior. If not, we would follow progressive action.
Supervisor Yeomans. Oh, go ahead,
I'm
Josh.
sorry, I was just gonna add briefly, the way to think about it is not so much a condition of employment, but think about it when our employees might be displaying behaviors that are harassing in nature, for example, or an example that might be behavior that's not allowed under our HR policies. That'd be more of the way to think about it as far as consequences than it would be like a hiring question.
Follow-up question then is which supervisors from what departments will be responsible for checking the parking lot and the offices and the desks and all that kind of stuff?
So the way I think about it is not so much that we would have people scouting out parking lots, and certainly feel free to supplement this. Again, in the way I described it more about harassing behavior, it's when things come to the attention of staff or supervisors is when they'd be addressed. And is that the way that you would see it as well?
Yes, and I think because it is a new rule that is being put forward, we would ask our supervisors, and they are aware of this resolution being on the agenda for tonight, our department heads are, we would just ask them to make sure that it's communicated to all employees that this is a new resolution that was passed by the county board and that we would anticipate and expect everybody to comply.
Supervisor Yeomans, does that answer your questions?
Well, yeah, I guess I just had one more thing. That there was a question at the beginning of the board meeting from somebody about First Amendment rights and lawsuits and things like that. Are we prepared to budget something to defend that?
I guess I can answer the question about that. So, we pay insurance premiums every year to our insurer, WMIC, and constitutional litigation is covered by our policy, including the cost of defense. So, I mean, those funds are budgeted on a routine basis for all kinds of things that may involve constitutional violations. Those ordinarily come out of law enforcement, but they could come from any aspect of the county. And the other piece of this too, I guess I would say on the First Amendment grounds, is that this was brought forth to me prior to being introduced. I am comfortable with it respects the First Amendment. Again, we're not branching out into regulating the public's speech. Members of the public who choose to speak in this manner can still do so, even on county property, meaning individuals who would come into the courthouse, members of the public, which is a publicly accessible building, are going to be free to speak. Employees of public entities, including counties, do maintain First Amendment rights. It's important to remember that, but they are more limited when they are at work than when they are not at work. And in doing so, I think that this resolution legally appropriately balances the interests of the county in maintaining a harmonious workforce against those interests in public speech of its employees. And I think that balance would pass constitutional muster if it was challenged.
Thank you.
Supervisor Zajac, I do see that you have your hand raised.
Yeah, the follow-up to that too, just because I remember the comments made from Lisa earlier about this. I noticed the resolution indicated other cities, counties, states, and even the military, the US military have done this. Anybody else had any First Amendment issues that we're aware of?
I'm not aware of any cases. So there have been of public employees being disciplined because of display of the Confederate flag. There have been other aspects in which the kind of Confederate flag has been brought up in the context of First Amendment litigation. And so, you know, one of the things that's been established in the course of that litigation over the last 15 years is that government units have speech rights in themselves. So as a government entity, we have the right to use our voice to speak and say, give out messages that are endorsed by the county. And so in the context of, for instance, license plates, that has been determined to be government speech and so can be appropriately regulated in the context of the Confederate flag. So I mean, there is precedent out there for government units regulating the display of the Confederate flag. And again, you know, when looking at this, to balance the interests of government in doing so against the First Amendment interests of our employees. And I think that you know, is consistent with previous case law in the matter.
Thank you.
Supervisor Baumkamp has his hand raised.
I would agree with that. The First Amendment, being the past union president, I've dealt with some of this stuff, and you do have a lot less rights if you're employed by the entity. That's not my thing. My biggest fear is working in a hostile work environment, harassment. That's a bigger chance of getting sued. And by someone having one of these flags, it's probably aimed at somebody. If they want to act like an idiot and pull out of the driveway and put their flag up, let them do it. But it doesn't belong on county property. We need to protect our employees, and it is offensive, and it shouldn't be acceptable.
Thank you, Supervisor Baumkamp. I do not see any other hands raised. However, are there any other supervisors wishing to speak or ask a question?
Supervisor Peer.
Go ahead, Supervisor Peer.
I'm just curious, for clarification's sake, are you saying, like, if this was passed, that when a person is working as a county employee, they conduct themselves one way, but what if they're off work and they come back on the county property, then can they act another way?
I mean,
Rich, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if anyone else was going to jump in, but yeah, I can address. So the context of this resolution in itself would only prohibit displays by employees on county property. So we get into much hairier ground when we would try to regulate the speech of employees outside of the context of the work environment. You know, there's this like spectrum. It doesn't mean that we never can. There certainly are times when an employee engages in a specific course of conduct or a specific course of speech and it has nothing to do with work, and yet it affects their work in really profound ways in the work environment. And it's possible for us to regulate those areas. But in terms of banning displays of the Confederate flag, the limit of this resolution is county employees on county property. And it does not reach into what a county employee may do with regards to specifically to the Confederate flag off of county property.
Any other questions? Comments? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, my internet is being really unstable right now. I'm sorry about that. Were there any other questions or comments? And I'm sorry if I interrupted anyone.
No questions.
Okay, all right. Hearing none. All those in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed with no?
Awesome.
All right, motion passes. Next item, please.
Next item, 12I, authorizing hazard pay for additional departments' COVID-19 risk.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Moved by Beaver. Second by Shirley Williams.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Supervisor Beaver, since this is your resolution, could you give us a quick summary?
I will give you a quick summary. The ME's office and the Human Department, fortunately, were left off the original hazard pay that came before the board. And this is to rectify that situation. Obviously, common sense tells you that, the ME department obviously is dealing with the COVID through, the deceased people, and human services are still doing their job, going out to visit for in-person visits with people who, again, could be infected and not know that. So this is just righting a wrong that should have been taken care of earlier. We are just fixing it now. So thank you for your support.
Any questions at all from supervisors or comments? Supervisor Knutson, I do see you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand this is aimed towards county employees who work in congregate facilities where they could be exposed to COVID-19, but other criteria can also be considered, since some of the employees getting the $500 did not work in a capacity where they directly cared for people in the congregate host facility. When this all started in the beginning of March, 911 staff showed up every day under very stressful circumstances. In the beginning, not much could be done with social distancing because room and equipment set up. If any of you have been out to the 911 center, they're sandwiched in there, and some of them cubicles pretty tight. They could not send staff down to the backup site at Town of Beloit Fire Department because they would have been in close contact with medical providers who were caring for potential COVID patients. A lot of employees were scared, but they came to work every day because they knew they were needed. In mid-March, employees were encouraged to work from home if they could. Dispatch and call staff could not. Maximum flexibility was given to many staff in other departments. This couldn't be done at 911 because of minimum staffing levels. While staff was not in physical contact with COVID patients, they still experienced many of the same stressors the police, fire, and EMS do. The critical point that I want to make is that 911 staff were carved out of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, just the same as the Sheriff's Office, Youth Services Center, Rock Haven Health Department, and the ME's office. They are so essential to public safety and this pandemic situation that it could not be afforded to have any of those employees take off because they're extremely short-staffed out there. We should take everything that our 911 staff do into consideration, as they were the crucial and critical link between our citizens and emergency services. Those EMS, firemen, police response, and all the people on the other end of the line begging for help. With that being said, I'm moving to amend this resolution to add line 20D in dog 911 staff. I don't think the minimal cost of adding 911 staff would swing the budget or negatively affect anything we are doing with these movements. I'd appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Second by Jeremy.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to amend the resolution to include the 911 staff. The amendment is now on the floor for discussion or questions from supervisors. So right now we're discussing the amendment, the proposed amendment of adding the 911 dispatch center. Are there any questions or comments from supervisors regarding the amendment? Supervisor Yeomans, I see that you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand that the 911 is in close quarters, but I also understand the county is, if I'm not mistaken, has split the 911 center responsibilities to other offsite locations to try and solve that problem. I believe some 911 center employees are working out of the highway department now. But maybe Josh can clarify what the county has done to keep the 911 folks safe.
Thank you. Yeah, so you're correct. And both Supervisor Knudsen and Supervisor Yeomans are correct. Early on, there was not an opportunity to split off those staff. As we got into it, you remember that you approved purchase of some laptops that allowed them to operate over at DPW, and they did for some time. And now those staff have returned back to the 911 center. Now there's been some other arrangements made in the center to try to accommodate not some distancing, but some other protections for the staff. So that's the current status.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from supervisors?
Yeah, sorry, Madam Chair, may I?
Go ahead.
I was at the 911 center not too long ago, and I know they've made some adjustments by working out at DPW and things like that, but there's still plenty of shared spaces. I know that the two gentlemen that work in the off room doing something that feed people working in these cubicles are virtually, they're sharing the same space in a small room. There's definitely logic behind including the 911.
Any other, see Supervisor Bostwick has his hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure if it was mentioned previously or not, and I didn't catch it, but how much more money would we be talking to include this workers?
Yeah, hi, this is Sherry. I'll have that for you in just a second.
Okay, while we're waiting for that, any other questions? Oh, Sherry, are you ready already?
No, just maybe 2 seconds.
Okay.
Crazy.
Any other questions at all while we wait?
Supervisor Peer.
Go ahead,
I'm
Supervisor
just
Peer.
wondering, it's kind of related, but I'm just wondering, maybe Josh or Sherry would answer the question, but are we approaching in the budget when it's a concern? Because obviously everybody comes and makes their, that takes their stand and makes their argument about the need for whatever department we're talking about. And they all do a great job, and everyone is really needs to be safe and so on. But are we starting to approach where the area where we should be concerned about, is there really room in the budget, and thinking in the future, if there is another episode of the epidemic getting even worse, are we really prepared to deal with that? Can anyone address that?
I'll start and then I'll let Sherry jump on as well. So as with the first hazard pay resolution, the intent would be to submit staff hazard pay payments to be reimbursed under the CARES funding, the routes to recovery funding that Rock County has been allocated by the governor through the federal government. So it is possible that 911 staff may or may not qualify for that. I'm not quite sure actually whether that would happen. Maybe Sherry's looked into that and she could answer better than I could. So the thing to keep in mind about the routes to recovery money is that it's has to be submitted, I think in October. Again, Sherry can opine on that, but those funds are available only this year. So to the extent that there's an increase in COVID cases that require something next year, those funds would no longer be available. And I know that Sherry is tracking and working on updating the amount of dollars that we have incurred so far that are going to be submitted for reimbursement. I believe we've not exceeded that yet. There's still funding available, but Sherry may have an update for us on that at some point. Probably not right now tonight, but at some point in the future. Sherry, do you have anything to add?
Okay, so adding the 911 staff would add about 26,200. I don't think 911 staff is eligible for CARES funding, but again, I'm not sure. I don't want to say for sure. I'd have to look that up. We still have a little bit of room in the CARES funding. I mean, it's nice as you see more resolutions coming through by individual departments to cover their CARES costs. So that helps. We don't have to take those costs out of the 2.6 million general CARES. And as far as the general fund, how it's looking for the year, we are getting in the estimates from the departments now. So, I'll have an update for you, hopefully in the near future with that.
Thanks, Sherry. Any other questions or comments on the amendment, which is to add the 911 dispatch staff to the resolution before you? Supervisor Baumkamp?
I guess when this first came to me, it was to the people that are actually out working in the general public. I understand they're under stress and everything. But that was my intent with that. And these other groups that were missed should have been in that first one and weren't. What's next? Are we going to have somebody from the county that, well, I have to go to 911 center to do their work on their computers, or who knows that people came in contact? I guess I'll vote in favor for it, but I want to make sure that they're taking some personal responsibilities in this too, that they're wearing their mask when they should be, whether they're at work or not. They have take some responsibilities in this also. I see people that work for the government that aren't wearing their mask, and we should be the leaders on that. And if they think it was that hazardous, they should be wearing their mask then. Now, it's not a political statement. We know it stops it, and it would, if we did have somebody that got it and spread it through the county, I mean, it costs us hundreds of $1,000s probably. So I'll vote in favor for it, but I want to make sure that these people are taking personal responsibilities during this time.
Any other supervisors with questions or comments? All right, hearing none, we have a motion and a second to amend the resolution to 911 dispatch staff. Let's go ahead and try to do this via voice vote. So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed with no?
No.
No.
Okay, I heard for dissent, I heard Yeomans, Mawini, and Richard. Did I get everyone? Okay. Lisa, do you have that? Okay.
I do.
Thank you. All right, so the amendment passes. So then we're back to the original motion, which was to authorize hazard pay for additional departments COVID-19 risk. And are there any questions on the, I do see that Sherry has her hand raised. So Sherry, was there something you needed to add?
Yep, so in my calculation, I only included 911 staff, but there's also a facilities person there, and I think 2 IT staff that are located out there. So, you know, that's my question, since we've added in, you know, a couple people with this original resolution. Do I add those in as well?
Rich, does that go back to Supervisor Knudsen and his intent with the amendment?
Yeah, so what I would say is that if we're being consistent with the original resolution passed a month ago or so, and how this one is drafted, the way that it's phrased is that the employees of the departments receive the hazard pay, not necessarily employees of other departments who may work in those locations. And that is in fact how we interpreted the previous resolution as well.
Okay. So Sherry, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So Rich, you're saying my payroll staff do pay those 3 people to be consistent?
We would not. So, and Josh and Annette can maybe confirm what I'm saying, because maybe I'm misremembering, but I thought, you know, we have facilities individuals at the jail and at Rockhaven. I do not believe they were paid the hazard pay under the last resolution.
Correct. So I think to be consistent, at least in being explicit, you see in line 18 of this resolution, it lists the facilities management staff in those facilities. As Rich said, that was an attempt to add folks in who weren't department based, but who were working in a facility that was considered to have staff paid in the last resolution. So I think what Rich is saying is if you want to be consistent, that you might also want to, and you want to include others than just 911 department staff, you might want to also make an additional amendment to amend, for example, line 18, which has other facility staff in it, to include facility staff who worked at 911 and or, as Sherry indicated, IT staff who are also deployed to 911 center. Is that the way, Rich, you were conceiving of it?
Yeah, I think. Hold on. Just trying to read through that there for resolve clauses again.
I do see that Brent Sutherland has his hand raised.
So right, so let me, so the therefore resolve clause links back to line C. Line C clearly line 18. So the way the resolve clause works is it says $500 to the above people, and the above people are the people in line 16, 17, and 18. So medical examiner staff, at-risk human services department staff, and facilities management staff that work out at the Sheriff's Office Youth Service Center in Rockhaven. if we're only amending line 20 to include 911 staff, that would not include facilities management staff or IT staff that work at 911. So we would want to include that staff as a part of either line 18 and 19, or it could be included as a part of line 20.
I would so move to include them. Knutson?
I'll follow with a second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to amend to include the facilities management staff and IT staff that work at the 911 dispatch center. However, then my question then becomes, do we need to include facilities management staff and IT in that verbiage then on line 18?
So facilities management staff, I would say that the best way to do that would be to append line 19 and have it say facilities management staff that work out of the sheriff's office, youth service center, and strike and add a comma so that it says Rockhaven and the 911 center, period. And then, I mean, I don't know, I guess I am unfamiliar with the circumstances of the IT staff member and whether they're embedded at the 911 center. You know, similarly, I'm unaware of whether the IT staff that specifically services the sheriff's office, which are a dedicated IT staff, are embedded inside the sheriff's office building. That's not an issue that we've addressed as of yet.
Madam Chair, this is Supervisor Levy. I have a question. It seems like there was a lot of questions on this. Is there a way that we can do an amendment, or I can make a motion to at least lay this over to the next meeting until we get some of these questions answered?
Well, I believe right now we have a motion and a second to amend. Would a motion to postpone to the next meeting be in order at this point, Rich?
Hold on one second. I gotta look that one up.
Okay.
I apologize, but I just hear, I mean, I hear a lot of discussion, a lot of questions need to be answered. So I would hate to rush through it. So.
Understood, Supervisor Levy. Just want to make sure if that's what we're going to do, we're just doing it the right way.
I don't believe that we need to dispose of the amendment first. So we have an amendment and we have a second, although I guess we're still clarifying the amendment. So maybe if Supervisors Knutson and Sajak still want to press forward their amendment, I guess we need to clarify the scope of the amendment because that's the item that has the floor currently. Once we've clarified the amendment to put it in proper form, then at that point in time, motion to postpone to a date certain would be in order, unless Supervisors Knutson and Sajak want to withdraw their second amendment and allow Supervisor Levy's motion to postpone to be considered first.
Supervisor Knutson, what are your wishes?
I think it's just a matter of a couple of words, cleanup sentence.
I agree. We seem to be close.
Okay, so I guess going back to maybe Rich's question previously, which was what is the status of the IT staff as it pertains to their work environment? Josh, could you or possibly Annette, somebody answer that question?
It was my understanding that all of the IT department went remote. They were one of the first departments to go remote, so I'd have to backtrack and see if those individuals went remote as well, unless Josh knows.
This is Jim Sandvig, the IT director. I'm sorry, I guess I don't understand the actual question. Are you asking us if those staff are embedded with the operations?
Yeah, Jim. So my question, I guess, is I am unaware, are there staff that are dedicated to 911? And if they are dedicated to 911, are they embedded physically at the 911 center,
Yes.
or do they work remotely?
Yes. So there are staff that are dedicated for 911, and there are staff that are dedicated for the sheriff's office. And they are embedded over in those operations.
And then, so, sorry to interrupt, the second question then, Jim, is the other criteria on these resolutions is that they would have been on site during this time period, you know, kind of the March 24th to the date of the resolution time period. I think that was the question that was raised, is were they working remotely during that time, or were they on site during that time?
Yeah, so our staff is most of the time working remotely, although for 911 and the sheriff's office, when required to physically be on site to actually do something, they go in, they do conduct the work, and then they go back to remote working once it's completed.
So then, just for purposes of clarifying via Supervisors Knutson and Sajak, is it your wish to include IT staff that are dedicated to the 911 center that may have gone in to perform work during that time period?
Yes.
I agree.
And is it your wish then to also include those same staff that would have gone into the sheriff's office to perform work during that time period?
Brian?
Run that by me again.
So just like the 911 center, there are IT staff that are dedicated to the sheriff's office IT needs, and they do travel into the sheriff's office when needed to, for instance, repair squad car notebooks or repair jail systems or update systems that need to be updated physically in person. And so they would be in a similar circumstance to IT staff that were performing those same functions. And so the question being, should they also receive the hazard pay?
I would say yes.
I would agree.
So then item C would read facilities management staff that work out of.
Rich, before you go on,
yeah,
I could maybe alleviate that. I think Brent probably has a point about the facilities management staff at the 911 center that'll be relevant.
Okay.
Brent, do you want to make that point?
Sure. So the facilities management person that works out of 911 is a shared position. So the person that works out of 911 also is the same one that works at YSC, who's already included in that solution that about facilities. So we wouldn't add additional cost to that.
Okay, that's good to know. And also, you don't need to have them we don't need to amend the resolution in order to cover that person. But if we're going to include IT staff, we do. So then I think it would say item or line 18 and 19 would read facilities management staff and information, Rocket staff that work out of the Sheriff's Office Youth Service Center in Rock Haven. We'll cover those staff that went to those facilities. But that's also it's going to include any IT staff that responded to service calls that had to show physically to any of those 3 locations.
Thank you for that clarification, Rich. This is Jim. There are others that also responded to Rock Haven that are not necessarily dedicated to Rock Haven, as is the case for 911 and Sheriff's Office, but a lot of our support staff do respond to Rock Haven and have done that throughout this time period.
So then I just want to be clear that from Supervisors Knutson and Sajak, that is the intent of your amendment is to provide a hazard pay stipend to IT staff that have responded to service calls at the Sheriff's Office, Rock Haven, 911, and Youth Service Center.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So then that's the amendment on the floor as I've just stated it.
All right, any questions on the amendment at all? Okay, if not, I believe then, Rich, we need to vote on this before we can consider Supervisor Levy's motion to postpone, correct?
Actually, no. So now that the amendment's been clarified and it's before the body, a motion to postpone would be in order at this point in time as to the entire package. So that a motion to postpone is a privileged motion. It can sort of interrupt the order of business. And so if Supervisor Levy wants to make his motion to postpone, it certainly could be in order at this time.
Well, this is Supervisor Levy. Now that we got it worked out, I didn't know how long it's going to take to get it worked out, but I mean, I'm comfortable with moving forward. I just thought staff needed a little bit more time to get information, but it seems as though that they have the information and if everyone is satisfied, then let's move forward with it.
Okay. All right, so any last questions from supervisors on the amendment at this point, which is before you for line 18 of the resolution?
Madam Chairman, Supervisor Podzilny here.
Yes, go ahead.
Is it always the same two people from IT that go over to the 911 center, or do they rotate through there so that there could be a half a dozen people qualified? Are we talking about just two people or multiple people that go there from time to time as they are available?
Hi, this is Jim. I can answer that. So typically it's the same two folks that typically respond to 911, and then up to 3 or so that would respond over at the sheriff's office. It's actually the response to Rock Haven that is more varied because we don't have dedicated staff for Rock Haven. It could be any number of the folks on the service team and a couple other teams on IT that have had to physically go over there. So that's probably looking at closer to probably 6 or 7 that have responded over to Rock Haven. So you're probably looking at about around 11 or 12 of the IT staff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Any other questions from supervisors? All right, hearing none, there's a motion and a second to amend the resolution before you to include the verbiage facilities management staff and Rocket staff that work out of the Sheriff's Office, Youth Service Center, and Rock Haven and the 911 Dispatch Center. If I read that, did I read that correctly, Rich? Based on what you have? Okay, all right.
So.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the amendment, please say aye.
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 Any opposed with no?
No.
No.
Okay, for no's, I have Supervisor Yeomans and Supervisor Mowini. Did I miss anyone?
Richard.
And Supervisor Richard, thank you. All right.
Supervisor Sweeney.
I'm sorry, Supervisor Sweeney, you were against the amendment as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I will see that that's recorded. Anyone else? All right, hearing no others, that motion passes. So now we are back to the original to the amended resolution before you, which is authorizing hazard pay for additional departments, COVID-19 risk. Any questions on the original resolution, or I'm sorry, any questions on the resolution at this time or comments? Sherry, I do see that you have your hand raised, and then I'll go to Supervisor Yeomans.
Yep, so with the additional staff added to the resolution, line 27, the 91,000 would need to change to 123, so 123,000.
Thank you, Sherry. Supervisor Yeomans?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions. One is that it seems to me that we've gone from folks that have direct contact or have the possibility of having direct contact with somebody with COVID to a group of people that may have had contact with somebody that may have had contact with somebody that had COVID-19. It's my understanding that the CARES Act, as I have heard from staff, applies to people with direct contact, but not people with indirect contact. And so we've essentially, when anybody walks into the courthouse, it's a member of either the staff or the public, there is a possibility that they may have COVID. And so why is it we're not just giving everybody $500 for hazard pay? It gets to the point where we have no clear delineation about who should get it and who should not get it. That's my first point. My second question is, we have had no information about the number of Rock County employees who have come down with COVID and tested positive and have been out. And whether they're from one department or many departments, or if we've had any people. And I think that's kind of, if we find out the extent of the problem, it might help us make a more intelligent decision about who's entitled to it. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Yeomans. Any other supervisors with questions or comments? All right.
If I may, this is Supervisor Ashkin. I
Go
just
ahead.
wanted to say to Supervisor Yeomans, if he would like to indeed make it into a motion to have the stipend for everyone, then I would second that and we could discuss it.
Okay.
Any other supervisors? All right, hearing none. We have a motion and a second. And so I think on this one, let's go ahead and just do a roll call vote because we've had quite a bit of discussion and debate back and forth and amendments. So just to be clear on where everybody is voting, why don't we just go ahead and do this one with roll call, Lisa?
Podzilny,
No.
Grenish,
Yes.
Egger, Stephanie, Romans,
Did you say Yeomans or Holman?
Yeomans, sorry,
No.
Justina,
No.
Williams,
Yes.
Zajac,
Yes.
Holman, Dave, Levy,
Aye.
what was that again, Kevin?
Aye.
Lowkrantz,
Aye.
Knudsen,
Yes.
Richard,
No.
Mulwiney,
No.
Wildy,
Yes.
Here,
No.
Beaver,
Yes.
Potter,
Yes.
Scholes,
Yes.
Pam Bostwick,
Yes.
Yes.
Sweeney,
No.
Baumkamp,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Rashkin,
Yes.
Fox, Bryan,
Yes.
Mulligan,
No.
Rich Bostwick,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Davis,
No.
Purviance.
Yes.
I want to verify Agutter,
Yes.
Holman, Dave Holman,
No. Did that come through?
it did now, thank you. Eighteen yes, 10 no, 1 absent.
Motion passes. Next item, please.
Next item, 12J, Yahara River Basin Adaptive Management Project Approval of Incentive Payment.
Is there a
Sweeney
motion? Thank you. Is there a second?
Davis seconds.
All right, there's a
Who is
motion.
the first?
Sweeney.
Thank you.
All right, Supervisor Bostwick, or Supervisor Bostwick, did you want to take this one or?
Yeah, I was muted talking to my dog. I'm sorry. Yahara Winds is a partnership between the Land Conservation Department and other stakeholders in the Yahara River watershed, such as landowners, ag producers, wastewater treatment plants, municipalities, etc. The goal here is to reduce phosphorus levels in the Yahara River. The county assists stakeholders in implementing best management practices to help reduce phosphorus from entering the river. All costs incurred by the county helping achieve these best management practices will be reimbursed penny for penny to the county, making it cost neutral. So the bottom line is that this resolution allows us to pay these reimbursable costs. We recommend approval.
Thank you, Supervisor Bostwick. Any questions or comments from supervisors regarding the resolution? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed with no? All right, motion passes. Next item, please.
Next item, 12K, amending County Board Rule 1A Consent Agenda.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Davis moves.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second. Peterson second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Rich, do you want to just give us a summary of this rule change, please?
Yep. So in some ways, we've kind of previewed it with items 12A tonight, but so consent agendas are derived basically on a notion of not needing to adhere to formalized voting procedures when we know that the outcome, or we have a fairly certain idea that the outcome is going to be a unanimous vote on an item. And so in order to expedite business and shorten the length of the formalized kind of procedures that we end up going through, you can, the general idea is you lump all of those items together that you have a strong inclination are going to be unanimous. You consider them all at once and you pass them by unanimous consent. So without even a vote. And that's a consent agenda. Like conceptually, that's what a consent agenda is. So in, over the last few months, given how much business we're conducting electronically, and given that we may be doing more meetings electronically now, depending on what the board decides to do, the chair asked me to develop a rule that would adopt a consent agenda. And so that's this. The way that it would function is it would allow the chair at her discretion to put any resolution, ordinance, or ordinance amendment that was being considered onto the consent agenda, with the guidance that really only resolutions to which it's expected there to be a unanimous vote are appropriate for the consent agenda. But that being said, at any point prior to adoption of the consent agenda at a meeting, either before a meeting even starts or during the course of a meeting, any one supervisor requests that an item be removed from that consent agenda, the item is automatically removed and placed under consideration in the ordinary course of business as its own item under new business. So it would go after whatever the last item of new business on the agenda already is. So if we have 12A, B, C, and D, and then there's E, F, G, it would go as item H. And that's to protect the ability of any one supervisor to say, I don't want to just pass this without due debate or due consideration, or the ability to make sure that my colleagues know all of the positives or all of the negatives of adopting this piece of legislation. And so I want it to be considered under the ordinary course of business with the standard voting procedures and rules. And that's to protect the minority from getting railroaded and not being able to say their piece about any items. So if items are on the consent agenda, then so it would be 12A, would be the new 12A under the agenda. And at that point at which we get to 12A, the clerk would, the chair would say, next item of business, the clerk would say 12A, consent agenda, and then read off all of the resolutions, the titles of the resolutions that are under the consent agenda. And then supervisors would have the opportunity to ask staff or the chair factual questions about those resolutions. So that could be like, where is the funding coming from? Or what about this employee? Things that are fairly simple, factual things to be answered. It's not a time to discuss the merits of adoption or not adoption, or engage in a protracted debate over any one issue. If supervisors feel that that's an important piece of deciding whether to pass or not pass a piece of legislation, then they can request that that item be removed at that time and placed on the ordinary course of business and new business. As then we get through all of the questions that may be asked by supervisors for any of the resolutions on the consent agenda, and there's no more questions, then the chair just simply would ask, are there any objections? If there are no objections, then the whole agenda at one time passes by unanimous consent. And so, like, for instance, tonight we had a number of resolutions on the Council of Aging budget. This was just simply a clarifying resolution amending the budget to get to articulate where funds and the level of funds that were allocated via these certain acts to the Council of Aging, that would be a very appropriate thing for a consent agenda. You know, we do things like tuck pointing every single year. It's included in the budget. It's not a particularly controversial matter, you know, that's awarded through bid. That would be, you know, those kinds of public works things that are fairly routine and rote and are expected would be appropriate for the consent agenda. It would also do nothing to change the way that committees consider resolutions, so that when a resolution is introduced and it goes to committee, committees will continue to engage in the full, you know, debate or full exploration of what those resolutions do and mean, and vote them out of committee in the same exact manner that they've always done. It's just when we get to the board approval stage, then resolutions could be placed in the consent agenda. There's also no requirement that resolutions be placed on the consent agenda. So in days that we have fairly light agendas, it may be that there's nothing placed on the consent agenda because there's no real reason to gain expediency. But you know, tonight we adopted, I think 6 or so pieces of legislation by unanimous consent, and that could have been expedited fairly substantially if we had had a consent agenda and adopted those items like all at once, as opposed to going through them individually and having to go through the formal procedures of those.
Any questions at all? Supervisor Rashkin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This seems like a really overdue kind of an idea. This takes me back to how Janesville City Council does their agendas. So Supervisor Bryan can attest that there is a consent agenda indeed. And it's very convenient because if things need to be removed off of the agenda for whatever reason, it's very easy to do. And the only thing that I want to add is that I think it would probably make sense to have it maybe at the beginning of the meeting, so that all the people that are sitting there that could potentially be answering questions or don't have to be there can kind of you know, they know that they're done and then they can leave or whatever they need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from supervisors? Supervisor Yeomans?
Thank you. Madam Chair, I in the committee, I voted against this because I felt that it was targeting the more important part of the agenda instead of the less important, in my mind, part of the agenda. And I was wondering if what the procedure would be if we could also have a consent agenda for items 4, 5, and 9 on the B part of the agenda, which would be the adoption of the agenda, the approval of minutes of prior meetings, and the nomination, appointments, and confirmations. Those are all routinely consent type items. And is it possible for me to make an amendment to this to include those so I could vote for it?
I believe is that possible, Rich? It's a rule change, right? Can we do that?
Yep, it's definitely possible. So let me kind of, because there's kind of 2 different questions going on in there. One is the easy one about the amendment. Yes, we can definitely amend. You can amend, you know, any action of the board really is subject to amendment. So the question that I have, so Supervisor Yeomans is absolutely correct that items 4, 5, and 9 are very typical items, or excuse me, 8, 4, 5, and 8, right? Supervisor, nominations, appointments, and confirmations. Or 4, 5, and 9. 9 is recognition of county employees.
Supervisor Yeomans, did you just want to clarify your intent?
Yeah.
Sorry.
4, 5, 8, and 9.
Okay, yeah, and so those are typical items that could be and often are included in a consent agenda. In developing this rule, the consent agenda was a new concept for this body, and so was trying to not have to rearrange the agenda in a lot of ways that were really going to be fundamental and people might not understand. But if the board wants to include more stuff in the consent agenda, then my recommendation would be to amend item 1 in the resolution to move the consent agenda to item 4 and make items 4, 5, 8, and 9 the new 4, A, B, C, and D. And then after D would be other, and that would include all resolutions that are described in the subsection 2 of the resolution.
Thank you, Rich. Can I make that motion to amend, please?
Of course. And is there a second?
Lowcrantz will second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to amend the rule as presented. Any questions from supervisors on the amendment? Yes, Supervisor Bryan?
I'm opposed to the inclusion of the recognition for county employees. I understand where you're coming from. A lot of people don't come, but there were people who do. And for all their years of service, I still think it's something that we should recognize and not just put it on the consent agenda. So I'm opposed to that part of it. And if that's included in the amendment, I'm going to be voting against it.
Just one point of clarification for Supervisor Bryan. I think the way that we would do it is that we would leave items 8 and 9 as titles on the agenda, and any item, so if an individual showed up to the meeting and we wanted to pull that one out for recognition, a supervisor could make that request and then it would go under item 9. So we would have item 4, which would be the consent agenda, and we'd have 4A, adoption of the agenda, 4B, approval of the minutes, 4C, nominations, and 4D, recognition. And then we would leave 8 and 9 as titles on the agenda so that if a resolution was removed from the consent agenda that dealt with nominations or recognition, it would automatically go into those places on the agenda and could be considered in the ordinary course of business. But then if nobody shows up or nobody requests that any of those items be removed, then we would not have to do items 8 and 9.
Well, a lot of times we as supervisors don't know for sure if somebody is there at the meeting. Generally, it's staff that would say that somebody is there or not. So I don't know why the burden should be put on us as supervisors.
I guess I would hope that staff would let a supervisor know of the governing committee that they should have an item removed.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, if I could, typically, I think the Marilyn and Lisa know in advance most of the time from the committees and from the department heads if staff are intending to come. So in most cases, I think if you were to move forward with this in this way, that we would know in constructing the agenda, so you wouldn't have to pull them off because we would know in advance if they were going to be there and they'd be placed under 9, for example.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Williams?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to make the same comment and concern. And I too would like for it to remain for the employee recognition. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from supervisors?
Just a question. This is Supervisor Levy, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Supervisor Levy.
So just listening to that, let's say if we had recognitions on the consent, if supervisors see that they want to pull it off the consent agenda, I'm just looking for some clarification here. Couldn't we just pull it off and act on it at that time versus putting it under another? So we wouldn't really need number 9 if we say, I want to take item 6A off the consent agenda and it's recognizing someone. staff would just report out that we're recognizing this individual that's here now. So it's not a big thing, but I was just wondering, do we need to even add that extra step in there if we're taking it off consent? Couldn't we just present it under, pulling it off the consent to just make the presentation then?
So, I mean, the short answer is yes. It really is just about what the board's preference is. And so generally we have public hearing, public comment, citizen participation before we get to anything substantive, including nominations, appointments, confirmations, and recognition of county employees. So if we're gonna have a substantive, recognition where a employee is presented with a plaque or talked about or, congratulated in some way, generally, in the current way of operating, we do all of those things after we do public comments and supervisor comments, or if we were going to have a public hearing, all of those things would be after public hearing. It doesn't have to be that way. Again, these are the board's approved agenda and the board's procedures. It can really do whatever it wants. And so, yeah.
Supervisor Levy, did that answer your question then?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. And then I do see Supervisor Williams has her hand raised again.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. One of the reasons I wanted it to remain is at times somebody could show up and someone was not aware. And again, we want to make sure that we appreciate properly any staff that's been recognized, and I don't want someone to be slighted. An error could easily occur, and I don't think we have a mechanism of ensuring that the error will not occur. So that's why we're stating my preference. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Williams. Supervisor Yeomans?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, I concur completely with what Supervisor Bryan and Williams have said. I do not wish through this motion to not have the ability to recognize employees that are coming to our meeting to get recognized. It's only to quickly go through those who do not choose to come. And it's my understanding that it's like Rich explained on the other consent agenda, that at any moment, if we're aware that somebody is in the room, then we can take it out of the consent part of the agenda.
Thank you, Supervisor Yeomans. Supervisor Aguilar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also think that we need to keep the employee recognitions, all of them, on the agenda, especially right now while we are virtual, because that recognition could be watched on YouTube. If not tonight, it could be watched at a later date. And I'm hoping that the video coverage of our meetings will continue. So that could end up being something that an employee can look back on or view at a different time, and really should be an important part of our meetings that we don't skip over.
So I believe Supervisor Aguilar, past practice has been, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Rich or Josh, that if a particular person does not show up in person to the meeting, then we don't necessarily at that meeting read that particular resolution. Is that correct?
Yes, so we have typically, when we've been meeting in person, when we've had employee recognition, if the individual is there, then we will present that resolution to the individual, and usually some remarks will be said by supervisors and usually a department head or not board supervisor, but their particular supervisor, the employee supervisor. And when they do not show up, we vote on it and then move on and don't engage in that presentation or reading of the resolution.
And currently, Josh, what has been our practice as far as with the virtual meetings regarding the staff recognition?
When we went virtual, the recognitions were stopped from being put on the agenda because the board has always appreciated having staff be able to show up and express your appreciation for them with a round of applause and to be able to listen to them in person. So those were put on pause, and we have quite a pile of them ready to go at some point. The intent was that when we returned in public, we'd invite those people back, as Supervisor Agutter is suggesting. If we are going to be out again for some time, the board may wish to reconsider whether or not to invite those people to a virtual recognition in the future at some point.
Thank you. I just felt like we needed some more clarification there after Supervisor Aguter's comments. Any other questions or comments from supervisors at all? All right, hearing none, we have a motion and a second to amend the rule. And that would be to include the items on the current agenda of approval of minutes, adoption of agenda, approval of minutes, nominations, appointments, and confirmation, recognition of county employees or others. That would include that in the consent agenda, which would then appear on the agenda under item number 4. So that is the amendment that is before you to vote on at this time. And I think for clarity, we'll go ahead and just do a roll call vote on this one. Yes.
Sweeney,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Yeomans,
Yes.
Fox, Wildy,
Yes.
Justina,
Yes.
Pam Bostwick,
Yes.
Holman,
Yes.
Potter,
Yes.
Podzilny,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Rashkin,
Yes.
Zajac,
Yes.
Baumkamp,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Agutter,
Yes.
Scholes,
Yes.
Lowkrantz,
Yes.
Mulligan,
Yes.
Mulwiney,
Yes.
Rich Bostwick,
Yes.
Renish,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Beaver,
Yes.
Brian,
No.
Pierre,
Yes.
Knudsen,
Yes.
Purviance,
Yes.
$27 yes, 1 no, 1 absent.
Thank you. The amendment passes. So we go back to the original rule, or the rule as amended. And are there any questions?
Madam,
Yes, Supervisor Knudsen?
thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not necessarily opposed to streamlining the agenda, but we will have be making these meetings go so quick that they won't be viewed as us necessarily earning our keep or earning our meeting per diem. These meetings will go actually quick.
Get out of here.
We'll reference tonight.
Yes, Supervisor Knudsen, I definitely hear your concerns, and I think as Rich stated earlier, there may be times if the agenda is you know, very short, in which we might not see the consent agenda on that particular meeting. So thank you for sharing your comments. Any other comments or questions from supervisors at all?
Davis has a question.
Go
When
ahead.
When will this take effect?
It'll be in effect immediately, so in time for the next board meeting.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed with no? Hearing none, motion passes. Last item, please.
I'll make a motion to adjourn by Gustina.
There's a-
One question, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I know we had quite a bit of discussion earlier about our first meeting in September. Are we going to take action at some point in time on that, or what's the status of that?
Yeah, I was wondering too, because we haven't really discussed it.
So I believe we'll be following up with that. Based on kind of the comments that were made this evening, just be watching your emails over the next couple of days. And I will be in touch with Josh and be talking with Rich Bostwick as well. And then we'll be sending communications out to you all soon so that you can plan accordingly. So be looking for something soon. And with that, Supervisor Gustina has made a motion to adjourn. Was there a second to adjourn?
Second by Levy.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. We are adjourned. Have a great night.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.